beyond the Mage. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction. So don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 51 Expansion of the Spell Treasury. Thinking this, Gata took out his charcoal pencil and sat down at the table. He opened the spell recipe for Flame Arrow, picked up the pencil, and began calculating in the blank space of the page according to the detailed instructions, adopting a posture of solving a problem. The old steps were still followed: establish a Cartesian coordinate system, decompose the coordinates of the spell stars in the Flame Arrow spell model, and create an ordered ternary array. The Flame Arrow spell model consisted of 10 spell stars. This should already be the limit of the trick, one more star than the Acid Splash spell model. But for Gata, who was about to graduate from the Department of Mathematics at Peking University, decomposing the coordinates of 9 or 10 stars was an incredibly simple elementary school math problem. Before long, the coordinates of the 10 nodes appeared in the blank space of the recipe. Gata spent a few more minutes marking the 10 coordinates, then put down the spell recipe, sat cross-legged, relaxed his body, closed his eyes, and cleared his mind. Quickly entering a meditative state, Gata's mind immersed himself in the magnificent sea of spells, beginning to draw upon spell stars and attempt to construct the spell model for Fire Arrow. Whoosh! Gata exhaled sharply. He abruptly stood up, his slightly closed eyes opening, a hint of joy flickering within them. Time flew by unnoticed. In the blink of an eye, 9 days had passed since he opened the box and obtained the legacy of the Mage Seda. During these 9 days, Gata had become exceptionally busy. But the gains were equally immense. Wind Spirit Moon Shadow, Gata murmured in his mind. Instantly, an extremely rudimentary information interface appeared in his consciousness. Origin: 0 rings, human, 2/7, gray-eyed rat, used, dark swamp worm, used, wolf rat, 1/7, spells. 0 rings, mage hand, repair plus, acid splash plus, freezing ray, increase resistance, fire arrow, tracking mark, flash, touch of fatigue, detect magic. Looking at the 10 spells neatly arranged in the spell list, an indescribable sense of satisfaction filled Gata's heart. He had mastered all 5 spells left by the Mage Seda. Although Gata was still a first-class apprentice, in terms of the breadth of his spell library, even second-class apprentices were definitely inferior to him. In fact, among third-class apprentices, only senior-level ones could surpass him in the breadth of their spell library. The breadth is sufficient for now, but it would be good if the depth could be improved, Gata muttered to himself. He glanced at the flashing yellow plus signs next to 8 spells on his spell list, finding them somewhat irritating and wishing he could activate them all immediately. Unfortunately, he lacked the source. Currently, the best way to obtain the source was through Leeline creatures. However, these creatures lived in the wilderness outside the city. For Gata at his current level, hunting Leeline creatures in the primeval wilderness was too risky and demanding. While a first-class mage apprentice had indeed mastered a certain level of extraordinary power, he was still too fragile. And the wilderness held too many uncontrollable factors. Whether encountering powerful Leeline creatures or encountering people whose intentions were difficult to discern, it could lead to Gata's demise in the wild. Unless absolutely necessary, it was best not to take unnecessary risks. So, after only a fleeting thought of hunting Leeline creatures to obtain the source, Gata quickly suppressed it. Commercial District. Many days had passed, and the street traffic hadn't returned to its previous levels. In fact, it was even more crowded. The anomalies outside Hogan City continued. More and more outsiders, having heard the news, rushed to Hogan City to hunt for treasure. Seeing this, Gata's unease deepened. But even with his unease, it seemed there was nothing he could do except stockpile food. Thinking this, Gata first went to Phil's potion shop to sell the basic spider venom potions he had made recently. As he handed Gata the receipt, the shop assistant casually asked, "Why are all the potions delivered these days basic spider venom potions?" Gata's heart skipped a beat, but his face remained calm as he explained, "The mage has been away on business these days, not on the herb garden, so we can only provide basic spider venom potions for now. The shop assistant, having only asked casually, didn't take it seriously. It's alright, basic spider venom potions are selling extremely well these days. In a few days, I'll need to spend some time trying out basic stamina potions, Gata thought to himself as soon as he left Phil's potion shop. Currently, he still had to use the name of the Mage Seda to trade with Phil's potion shop. In the short term, the news that Master Seda was no longer alive must not be revealed. Although the apprentices in the herb garden had already reached a consensus to conceal this news, it wouldn't be without flaws if it aroused suspicion and someone wanted to investigate. At least, he couldn't guarantee that the apprentices could truly keep their mouths shut completely. While pondering how to continue the deception and use Master Seda's name as a pretext, Gata continued walking until he arrived at Pierre's shop. He stepped inside and was surprised to find that the small general store, which was usually empty except for Pierre, had 3 or 4 customers today. Gata patiently waited for a while until all the customers left. Business is good today, Gata said, somewhat surprised. These 3 or 4 customers weren't just browsing, they had each bought something. Not just today, it's been pretty good these past few days, Pierre replied without any pretense of politeness. With more and more outsiders coming, there are naturally more customers. Now, the merchants in the city wish that the anomalies outside the city would continue indefinitely, he remarked. You businessmen have made a small fortune these days, Gata nodded thoughtfully. I'd rather not have made this fortune, Pierre said with a hint of helplessness. Gata knew Pierre wasn't Versailles, after all, it was Pierre who had reminded him to stockpile grain in case of unforeseen circumstances. You've come to see me again, is there some big business opportunity that's been delivered to my door? Pierre shook his head and asked casually. Gata first looked around to make sure no one was there, then approached the counter and whispered, Boss, can you still contact Mr. Yam, the one who sold me the spell formula before? Pierre's already small eyes narrowed, almost to the point of being slits. But a glint of light shone through them. Still a 10 silver coin commission, Gata, thick-skinned, rubbed his fingers together, indicating that the profit was substantial. Did you look down on the remaining 2 spell formulas? Pierre glanced at Gata. That was then, and now is now, Gata chuckled. Besides, I was short on cash back then, don't bite off more than you can chew. Mastering all 3 spell formulas will take you a considerable amount of time, Pierre frowned slightly, offering a meaningful remark. I know, but it's better to be prepared, Gata didn't argue with Pierre, simply offering a plausible reason. I can still contact him, but I'm not sure if he's still willing to sell the spell formulas. Seeing Gata's insistence, Pierre didn't press further, remaining cautious. Regardless of whether he's still willing to sell the spell formulas, I'll pay you 10 silver coins if you help me contact him, Gata, now somewhat financially secure, reluctantly added. Also, if he's unwilling to sell the spell formulas anymore, you can tell him I'm willing to increase the price. Deal, Pierre chuckled, giving Gata a meaningful look. Looks like you've made quite a haul this time. Chapter 52 Basic Magic Potions. God was startled, realizing he hadn't been cautious enough and had been too impulsive. He had recently bought a spell scroll from Pierre to suppress the arcane lock, and now he was displaying such a nouveau-riche attitude. Anyone could guess the implications. Fortunately, Pierre wasn't malicious, and he guessed Pierre had roughly guessed something when God was trying to solve the arcane lock. Still, God was taken aback and learned his lesson. He mustn't be so smug again. Not bad, God chuckled, glossing over the topic, and cupped his hands in greeting. Then I look forward to your good news. After agreeing on a time with Pierre, God took his leave. The old man glanced at God's departing figure, thinking to himself, this kid seems increasingly formidable. Pierre had agreed to his request, and even if he wasn't sure he could get it, God was still quite pleased. At the time, Yam had brought a total of 5 spell recipes. Due to limited resources, he could only choose the 3 most suitable spell recipes based on his situation: Acid Splash, Freezing Ray, and Increased Resistance. He temporarily abandoned the remaining Blade Protection and Reading Magic. The reason he's now trying to contact Yam again to buy the remaining 2 spell recipes is firstly because he's much better off financially, and secondly because he desperately needs these 2 recipes he initially abandoned. To obtain the source, God will inevitably have to confront the Leline creatures. Blade Protection, which protects against physical damage, is therefore crucial. Moreover, God vividly remembers being ambushed by 3 unemployed miners from the city. Although it was only a minor injury, and he managed to repel them with a spell. The memory still lingers. As the saying goes, even the best martial artist fears a kitchen knife. With blade protection, he no longer needs to worry about knives. As for reading magic, it's even more important to God. In fact, this could be considered his primary goal. Leaving aside the inconveniences a mage would face in the future without the ability to decipher magical text, even in the present, God had reasons why he absolutely needed to master reading magic. He needed to use reading magic to decipher the magical text on that scroll of unknown origin and purpose from the legacy of the Mage Seda. How could anyone not be curious about what was recorded on such a scroll that looked so precious? After leaving Pierre's general store, God didn't return directly to the herb garden. He thought for a moment and finally detoured to Rose Potion Shop, located at the end of the street, the furthest from Phil's Potion Shop. There were three most famous potion shops in Hogan City: Phil's Potion Shop, Ghost Light Potion Shop, and Rose Potion Shop. All three wanted to dominate the potion market in Hogan City, so the competition between them was fierce, almost irreconcilable. At a potion shop, one either bought or sold potions. God's goal was the latter. Now, with a huge sum in his hands, God finally had the idea he had previously hesitated to pursue. He planned to splurge on basic magic potions to aid his cultivation of guidance magic. However, he couldn't buy them at Phil's Potion Shop. He had already aroused the suspicion of the shopkeepers, so buying basic magic potions at another shop was the safest option. The market price for a set of basic magic potions was 6 gold. A first-class mage apprentice could consume a set of basic magic potions in 6 days. In other words, if Gouda wanted to continuously consume basic magic potions, the 50 gold left by the Mage Seda would only support his cultivation for 50 days. Although Gouda was usually quite miserly, he could still distinguish between the importance of cultivation and money. Besides, as his strength increased, earning money would become easier. And so, stepping into the Rose Potion Shop, Gouda scanned the shop but didn't see any basic magic potions for sale. However, he didn't leave disappointed. In small towns, the number of mages is still too small, so the potions sold in potion shops are mainly those that ordinary people can use. Potions specifically for mages, like basic magic potions, aren't necessarily displayed prominently. The shop assistants were very observant. Before Gouda could even ask, a young male clerk approached and asked, "Hello, sir, what do you need?" He noticed Gouda's eyes scanning the shelves as soon as he entered, clearly looking for the potion he needed. These kinds of customers rarely need any sales pitches and almost never leave empty-handed. But seeing that Gouda had practically scanned the entire shop without speaking, he guessed that Gouda hadn't found what he wanted and quickly went to assist him. "Do you sell basic magic potions?" "I don't see any, of course. They're in the medicine cabinet." "Wait a moment, I'll get them for you." The clerk looked at Gouda with slight surprise. Gouda was wearing a brown linen robe, typical attire for a commoner. Basic magic potions were clearly a luxury item, and he hadn't expected Gouda's target to be them. Despite his surprise, the shop assistant had already nimbly squatted down in front of the medicine cabinet next to the counter, then took an exquisite box from a drawer, carefully placed it on the counter, and opened it in front of Gouda. Inside the box were 3 small vials of potions, the liquid a crystalline sea blue. "Look, sir." Gouda's heart skipped a beat, a glint of light flashing in his eyes. Detection magic. At that moment, in his eyes, a medium brightness aura, invisible to others, flickered on the potion bottles. The quality was quite good. After inspecting the goods, Gouda was satisfied. "How much is a set?" he asked as usual. "Sir, a set is only 6 gold and 10 silver. Our prices are fixed and not negotiable." The shop assistant smiled. "Isn't the market price for basic magic potions 6 gold a set?" Gouda's expression changed, and he could no longer maintain his composure. "It's like this," the shopkeeper patiently explained, "but recently, due to the frequent appearances of feline creatures outside the city, many outsiders have flocked to Hogan City. As you know, a large portion of these outsiders are mage apprentices, and they also buy basic magic potions. If it weren't for this unexpected situation, our pharmacy's sales of basic magic potions would normally be very stable. We'd sell roughly the same number of sets a year, so we've been very careful with our stock. Now, with this whole mess, our stock obviously can't keep up, so we have to raise prices." The shopkeeper shrugged, stating matter-of-factly, "Not just us. If you go to Phil's Potion Shop or Ghost Light Potion Shop, you'll see the same price. Again, the market determines the price." "Fine, Hearing this, Gauda could only accept his fate, gritting his teeth resentfully. And then said, "Give me 2 sets, alright." The shopkeeper immediately squatted down enthusiastically and took out another set of basic magic potions from the medicine cabinet. A sale worth more than 10 gold coins was considered a large order in the shop. Gauda carefully rummaged through his pocket and took out his money bag, counted out 13 gold coins, and paid them to the shop assistant. Chapter 53 Small Progress. Inside Gauda's workshop in the herb garden, Gauda carefully opened the box, took out a small bottle of basic magic potion, and held it in his hand. Extravagant, he couldn't help but exclaim again. The price of this small bottle of liquid was enough to cover the expenses of the 8 people in the herb garden for nearly 10 days. And he could consume a small bottle every 2 days while practicing his channeling magic. Since the money was already spent, Gauda didn't dwell on it any longer and gently pulled out the stopper. A strange medicinal smell wafted out, not unpleasant. Gauda tilted his head back and drank the entire bottle of basic magic potion in one gulp. After making sure there wasn't a drop left, he put the empty bottle back in the box. He could rinse it off and reuse it for making medicine later, so he couldn't waste it. With such an expensive price, don't disappoint me, Gauda muttered to himself, then quickly entered a meditative state, the tranquil state necessary for channeling magic practice. As soon as he entered the meditative state, Gauda felt something different. A warm current was continuously surging from his abdomen, an endless stream of magic power. Normally, magic floats in the outside world, and he needs to use a guiding technique to channel it into his body before converting it into his own mana. But now, the magic is gathering in his abdomen, so there's no need to guide it in from the outside. Gauda had never seen such a good thing before, and he immediately began to eagerly circulate the guiding technique, greedily absorbing the magic gathered in his lower abdomen and converting it into his own mana. Feeling the increasingly abundant mana within his body, Gauda, even in his meditative state, couldn't help but smile. Only when his mental energy reached its critical point did Gauda awaken from his meditation and stop practicing the guiding technique. As expected, you get what you pay for. This 1 time's progress is equivalent to 5 or 6 times before. Gauda carefully felt his mana growth and sincerely exclaimed, "If I continue to drink the basic mana potion to assist in the guiding technique practice, my mana will be able to advance to another level in 3 days. It took his predecessor 2 years to cultivate the guiding technique and meditation to the level of 5 magic tricks and 5 lotus petals respectively. This is even under the premise that his cultivation talent was already considered outstanding compared to the other apprentices in the herb garden. In fact, not only the apprentices, but even the Mage Sada's magical talent was far inferior to Gauda's. Even with the occasional use of basic magic potions, the Mage Sada didn't reach the 3rd level apprentice level until he was 35 years old. In fact, even if we brought in the scope to all mages, the predecessor's magical talent should be ranked in the lower middle range. Even so, it took him an average of 144 days, or 5 months, to break through a minor level. If calculated according to this cultivation efficiency, if the predecessor of Gauda wanted to cultivate the guiding technique from the beginner level to the 3rd level apprentice level, 20 spells, without slacking off for a single day, it seems that it would only take 2,880 days, or 8 years. Of course, cultivation cannot be calculated so simply. The reason why mage apprentices are divided into 1st level to 3rd level is that the time required to increase a minor level of magic power increases by 1 level for each level. To put it simply, improving from 60 to 70 points is different from improving from 70 to 80 points, although both are increases of 10 points, the effort and energy required are definitely different. Normally, it takes 1.5 times longer for someone to advance 1 level of magic power during the 2nd level apprentice stage compared to the 1st level apprentice stage. From 2nd level to 3rd level apprentice, magic power needs to increase by 15 minor levels. 1 minor level takes 144 days multiplied by 1.5, which is 216 days, Gauda calculated in his mind. To reach the 3rd level apprentice stage, it would take, Gauda quickly calculated and arrived at the answer, 3,240 days, that's exactly 9 years. Adding the previous 2 years, that's 11 years. For those mages with less talent, reaching the 3rd level apprentice stage would take over 20 years based on this calculation. No, that's not right. With breakthroughs in meditation and increased mental strength, the time available for daily guided magic practice also increases, as does the efficiency of absorbing magic power, This means the speed of guided magic practice will continuously increase with breakthroughs in meditation. Adding this layer, God couldn't calculate it precisely anymore. However, knowing that the total time required would be far less than 9 years was enough. Let's estimate it's 7 years. In 7 years, he'll be only 20. At 20, he can reach the 3rd class apprentice level. And I can also drink basic magic potions to accelerate my cultivation. Now, after drinking basic magic potions, 1 day is better than 5 days. 1 set, 3 small bottles, of basic magic potions can last me 6 days of cultivation, but that's because I'm still a 1st class apprentice. Once I reach 2nd class apprentice, I'll need to consume 1 small bottle of potion per day. If I drink basic magic potions the whole time. After a quick calculation, God arrived at the answer again, 43.2 days to advance 1 minor level. The next level will be broken through soon. Discounting that, there are still 14 minor levels left. He calculated for a moment 604.8 days, 1.68 years. That's right, if he persists in taking the potion, as long as it doesn't exceed 2 years, he can reach the 3rd class apprentice level, the same level as Master Seda. This is the charm of taking potions. A set of basic magic potions costs 6 gold and 10 silver. At the consumption rate of a 2nd class apprentice, it would require approximately 201 sets of basic magic potions, which is 1,306 gold. God shrugged, deciding against it. He couldn't afford it. Let's be realistic. This potion can only be used occasionally. He became honest and stopped daydreaming. However, God frowned again, thinking of a crucial problem. He had only been in this world for 2 months, and his meditation technique had already broken through from 5 lotus petals to 7. Without the aid of magic potions, my meditation progress will soon far surpass my guidance technique progress, but if I want to drink basic magic potions long term, the expense is definitely beyond my means. The contradiction was irreconcilable. A penny can stump a hero, but it certainly wouldn't stump Gouda. But 1,306 gold would stump even 2 Goudas. If only I could get the formula for basic magic potions, Gouda murmured. The cost of materials for a single batch of basic spider venom potion, if all raw materials are purchased, is 30 silver. However, if one owns their own herb garden and cultivates the necessary raw materials, this cost can be reduced by more than half. Phil's Potion Shop offers potion makers 2 gold per batch. After the basic spider venom potion changes hands from the potion maker to the shop, the selling price rises to 2 gold and 10 silver. Based on this rough estimate, if God could concoct basic magic potions himself, the cost of a single batch could be reduced from the current 6 gold and 10 silver to around 3 gold, or even lower. However, this is virtually impossible. The recipe for basic magic potions is never available on the market. For any potion maker, it's a non-sale item. After drinking the basic magic potion, God's progress in guiding magic finally caught up with meditation, and began to advance rapidly. Just as he had predicted, 3 days later, on the 13th day of the green sprout month, the guiding technique, which had been progressing so slowly, like an ox pulling a cart, that it had been driving Gouda to despair, finally broke through. As the magic power from the potion in his lower abdomen was absorbed and transformed into his own mana, it gradually merged seamlessly with his existing mana, growing immensely. Suddenly, his body trembled slightly, and his mana flow surged by 20%. Gouda knew what had happened and let out a long sigh. Finally, I've broken through too. Now my mana is enough for me to cast 6 spells. If the guiding technique were cultivated to perfection, the mana gained would be enough for him to cast 20 spells in one go. Although the guiding technique didn't have a clear hierarchy, only roughly divided into 1st to 3rd level apprenticeships, Gouda could still deduce his progress based on the number of spells he could currently cast in one breath. Chapter 54 Basic Endurance Potion. Same price as before, 2 gold coins for 1 spell recipe, no problem. In Pierre's general store, God and Yam haggled. After reaching a deal with God, Pierre quickly contacted Yam, the one who had sold the spell recipe to God. Yam was indeed still interested in the spell recipe deal, and agreed without hesitation after being contacted by Pierre. This was entirely within God's expectations. In his view, privately trading spell recipes was a forbidden activity, and there was only a first time and countless times. After all, spell recipes could be infinitely copied, with almost no cost, yet could be sold at a high price. This was quick money, even faster than gambling. The reason most people didn't dare to make this money was because it was forbidden and extremely risky. But once you tasted the sweetness, it was hard to quit. Last time I sold 3 in a package, and I was particularly tight on money then, which is why I gave you this price, Yam said, this time trying to raise the price. Forget it then, it's too expensive, not worth it. I haven't even finished digesting the 3 spell recipes from last time, I can't bite off more than I can chew. Gauda pretended to give up the deal. Hey, could you add a little more for me? Yam quickly stopped Gauda, saying helplessly. At this price, I can't add a single bit. Gauda was always a principled person, sticking to his bottom line, and kindly reminded him, don't even mention 2 gold, you'd still make a profit even if it were 2 silver. Alright. Seeing that he couldn't get a single extra coin from Gauda, Yam could only give in. In fact, Gauda desperately needed these 2 spell recipes. Moreover, after the last transaction, the credibility of the spell recipes in Yam's hands had been verified. So if Yam dared to stick to the price, even selling them at the official price of 6 gold per recipe, Gauda would grit his teeth and accept. But unfortunately, Yam didn't know that. So he could only be manipulated by Gauda. After the price was agreed upon, Gauda reluctantly took out 4 gold from his pocket and handed it to Yam. The spell recipes for reading magic and blade protection are in hand. After leaving Pierre's general store, God went to the herb garden in the city that specializes in selling herb seedlings and spent 8 gold to buy a batch of seedlings. After some haggling, in addition to delivery to his door, he also got enough fertilizer for half a month. It has to be said that God is quite adept at bargaining. Actually, herbs themselves also produce seeds, and it's not impossible to germinate them by directly collecting them. The problem is that the medicinal properties of the herbs that grow from these seeds are much worse than those of seedlings specially cultivated by herbalists. Using these inferior herbs to concoct potions will also result in inferior potions. Although herbalism is not as advanced as potion making, the breadth of knowledge involved should not be underestimated. Herb seedlings cultivated by herbalists who have mastered the knowledge of herb cultivation have much higher medicinal properties than naturally grown seedlings. Glug glug. Ramos brought in a large pot of freshly stewed meat soup. The residual heat kept the broth bubbling and boiling. This is a stew made according to your suggested method, Ramos said, sounding quite reserved. Having personally killed both Elon and the Mage Seda, even though Goddard was young, he had established his authority in the herb garden. Thanks, Goddard said casually, waving his hand and dismissing Ramos. After Ramos left, Goddard washed his hands and then eagerly lifted the lid from the wooden basin to keep it warm. A rich, milky white aroma wafted out. Tender peas and fresh meat were the main ingredients, each piece the size of a baby's fist. Potatoes and onions garnished the dish, and a fragrant wheat bread loaf soaked in the broth, absorbing the flavors and heat, becoming even softer and more flavorful. A large pot of stew. Goddard couldn't help but swallow hard, quickly picking up a pair of chopsticks and putting a piece of potato in his mouth. He'd never gotten used to using a knife and fork, so after becoming the master of the herb garden, he'd made his own chopsticks. The unique texture of the potato mixed with the rich aroma of the meat broth instantly filled Goddard's mouth. So delicious, that one bite warmed his entire stomach. Goddard picked up another piece of meat, the stewed meat, so tender it practically melted in his mouth, its aroma exploding instantly. His hunger was fully aroused, and his saliva began to flow like wildfire. Ignoring the heat, he grabbed the piece of wheat bread soaked in the meat broth and wolfed it down along with a pot of pea and meat soup. After finishing the entire bowl of meat and side dishes, he picked up the whole bowl and drank the rich broth clean. Satisfied, Goddard put down the bowl and patted his stomach contentedly. With continued training and a more varied diet, his body grew stronger day by day, and his appetite improved even more. His once somewhat thin body has gradually become more robust, his complexion rosy, and his eyes increasingly bright and alert. This further proves the correctness of his training. The biggest gain is that Goddard discovered that as his physical fitness improved, his energy also increased, which is beneficial for both cultivation and medicine making. This was an unexpected benefit he hadn't anticipated. Indeed, good physical fitness is the foundation of everything. Back in his workshop, Goddard first tidied up his messy desk. This was the mess left over from his attempt to concoct a basic stamina potion that afternoon. The thought of the basic stamina potion made Goddard feel troubled. The 3 main ingredients required for the basic stamina potion are high mountain ironwood root, blazing sun fruit kernel, and wolf gland fluid. The herb garden can produce the first two, but the last one, the wolf gland fluid, needs to be purchased from outside. Due to the increased hunting activities in Hagen City recently, the price of wolf gland fluid has dropped by almost 30% compared to before, from 8 silver per serving to 6 silver per serving. Knowing that now was the best time to practice concocting basic stamina potions, Gouda decisively began his attempt. He spent 6 gold to buy 20 portions of wolf gland fluid, hoping to master the basic stamina potion in one go. However, the results were disappointing. During this period, he tried to concoct basic stamina potion 6 or 7 times, but he was still far from successful. The best attempt only completed half the work. He didn't produce a single bottle of basic stamina potion, saw no profit, and had already spent 2 gold on the raw materials. Moreover, this negative return would continue for quite some time, judging from the situation. He definitely wouldn't be able to master the basic stamina potion within 20 attempts. Although it was painful, Gouda could only grit his teeth and continue. To master a new potion, the initial investment was absolutely unavoidable. There was no way around it. In this light, I really have to thank Master Seda for his discerning eye, Gouda thought with some emotion after personally experiencing the difficulty of making potions and the large amount of initial investment required. The fact that the original owner was able to master basic spider venom potion making was not only due to his innate talent in potions, but also crucially due to the generosity of the Mage Seda. He was at least willing to provide Gouda with valuable medicinal materials for practice. If it weren't for the inescapable potion testing, the Mage Seda, who took the beggars back to the herb garden, provided them with food and lodging, and taught them cultivation methods and potion-making knowledge, would honestly be considered a great benefactor to the apprentices. Unfortunately, there are no ifs. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Deciphering the Scroll. Gouda shook his head, banishing these distracting thoughts. He reached out and retrieved a box containing basic magic potions from beside the wooden table. He opened the box. Almost finished, Gouda looked at the 3 neatly arranged bottles inside. Only one remained intact, the other 2 were empty. He took out the last bottle of basic magic potion. Looking at the clear liquid inside, Gouda couldn't help but sigh. This stuff is almost as addictive as drugs. The astonishing cultivation efficiency after taking basic magic potions is addictive. Once you get used to the exhilarating feeling of high-efficiency cultivation after drinking the potion, once you stop, the cultivation methods you've long been accustomed to become slow and sluggish, making cultivation incredibly difficult. It's truly hard to go from luxury to frugality. He gently pulled out the stopper and drank the entire bottle of basic magic potion in one gulp. Only after confirming there wasn't a drop left did Gouda begin his cultivation for the day. After completing the Nanfu style of training, where 1 session is better than 6, Gouda didn't immediately get up. Instead, he began constructing a spell model. 2 days had passed since he purchased 2 new spell formulas. He had been working on the reading magic spell model for those 2 days, but his luck hadn't been good. He hadn't succeeded for 2 consecutive days. If I could really complete the spirit potion formula, with the aid of the potion, I could master any magic trick within a day, Gouda muttered to himself. Several times he had failed, falling just short of success. If his mental control were a little stronger, he would have succeeded. But even with these setbacks, he should be able to master reading magic within a day or 2. Thinking this, Gouda began to calm his mind and once again attempted to construct a spell model in the sea of spells. Half an hour later, Gouda suddenly opened his eyes, a faint hint of joy in his gaze. He silently recited, Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. A simple information interface immediately appeared in Gouda's consciousness. In the spells section, a new entry had appeared after Detect Magic, Read Magic, Prophecy, 0 rings. You can decipher magical text on items such as books, scrolls, and weapons that cannot be deciphered by other means. Such deciphering usually does not release the magic contained within the text. Furthermore, once this spell has been cast and a piece of magical text has been deciphered, the same text can be understood again without needing to resort to read magic again. Finally, I succeeded, Gouda exclaimed. He suppressed his excitement and eagerness, opened his cabinet, took out the scroll left by the Mage Seda, and spread it out on the table. The scroll was covered with obscure and difficult to decipher magical text. The time and effort required to learn a language is unimaginable. In his previous life, it often took many years to master a foreign language. Fortunately, in this world, there exists such an inexplicable and extraordinary power as magic. With a slight thought, Gada's magical power flowed, and a star trail flashed across the newly constructed spell model of reading magic within his magical star sea. His eyes suddenly lit up, an invisible magical fluctuation surging within them. Gada gently traced the magical characters on the scroll with his finger, his eyes intently following the movement. At this moment, language was no longer an obstacle. The originally obscure magical characters, though still appearing like scribbles to Gada, were revealing their meanings one by one in his mind. Series Academy of Magic. In the name of the 10th Dean of the Series Academy of Magic, write this letter. I recommend that the recipient of this letter, regardless of their background, age, or prior experience, enjoy the supreme honor and privilege of direct entry into this academy, without any form of entrance examination. This exceptional right is extraordinary, reserved only in extremely rare moments in the Academy's history for individuals and families who have demonstrated extraordinary potential or made significant contributions or have potential value to the Duchy and the Academy. The bearer of this letter, though not explicitly named here, has been confirmed by me, and I hereby grant this supreme recommendation. I firmly believe that the Cyrus Academy of Magic, as the most outstanding magic academy in the Duchy, has the ability and responsibility to open the doors of knowledge and power to the bearer. I request that the school council, regardless of when this letter is received, accept this recommendation and provide the bearer with the most honorable reception and support, arranging for them to directly enter the tutelage of a senior tutor suited to their talents and aspirations. May the light of magic guide their path, and may wisdom and courage forever accompany the name of Cyrus. Gavin Hogg, official seal. This is. Gaudy was astonished. The scroll's true identity was completely unexpected. Before deciphering it, Gaudy had many guesses about the scroll. It might be some incredible ancient secret, information about hidden treasures, or even knowledge of potion recipes. He never imagined it would be a letter of recommendation. No, it shouldn't be called a letter of recommendation. A letter of recommendation is a recommendation, and according to the content, it's more than just a recommendation. Isn't this just a guaranteed admission to graduate school? Gada murmured. He was very familiar with it. Regardless of background, age, or previous experience, it was the most prestigious guaranteed admission qualification. I just don't know what level this Cirrus Magic Academy is, where it's located, or whether it still exists today, Gada pondered. To be honest, he was tempted for a moment. Having experienced his previous life's education, Gada knew all too well how important a systematic foundation of learning was. It was like the foundation of a towering building. The master leads you through the door, but the cultivation depends on yourself. True achievement isn't taught, but the initial step of being led through the door is incredibly important. But after a moment's thought, Gada immediately recognized reality. He had never heard of the name Cirrus Magic Academy before, which proved that the Magic Academy either no longer existed or was located far away from Hogan City. If it was the former, then there was nothing to say. If it was the latter, given his current situation, Gada wouldn't abandon his herb garden and leave Hogan City for this admission qualification. Firstly, he currently lacked the ability to travel long distances. Secondly, abandoning a reasonably well-functioning business for a so-called letter of recommendation without examination would be too unwise. Although the letter stated, regardless of when the school council receives this letter, it must accept this recommendation, it's common knowledge that once a get-out-of-jail-free card is broken, it's broken. One can simply kowtow before one's ancestors. The effectiveness of such oaths depends entirely on luck. The expected investment and the expected return are disproportionate. At least for now, this letter of recommendation without examination has little value to Gada. Gada was somewhat disappointed, but still carefully put it away. Maybe it will come in handy in the future. After all, the scroll clearly stated, regardless of their background, age, or previous experience, they enjoy the highest honor and privilege of direct entry into this school. I'll try to ask Pierre about it. He might know about this Cirrus Magic Academy. After all, it was left behind by the Mage Seda. It's most likely a magic academy of the Duchy of Sienne, Gada thought to himself. The Duchy of Sienne was already large enough, and Gauda found it hard to believe that Mage Seda would possess a letter of recommendation without examination from a magic academy in another country. However, if this year's magic academy truly belongs to the Duchy of Sienne, why wouldn't Mage Seda use this letter of recommendation? But beneath this speculation, new doubts arose, leaving Gauda completely perplexed. Chapter 56 Strange Events in the City. Gauda's life as the owner of the herb garden finally began to get busy. The experiment with basic stamina potions would continue for some time. The spell model for Blade Protection was successfully constructed just 2 days after mastering Reading Magic. With this, the number of spells in his spellbook expanded to 12. In addition, he and the apprentices in the herb garden planted a batch of seedlings they had just bought. Anyone who has been a farmer knows that the initial planting stage of any crop is the most troublesome, requiring meticulous care. Herb cultivation is no exception. Preparing the nutrients oil before planting, loosening the soil, planting the seedlings, fertilizing, watering, a series of tasks kept everyone extremely busy. However, looking at the thriving seedlings in the herb field, Gauda still felt a sense of satisfaction. These seedlings would eventually turn into golden Shan coins and enter his pocket. It wasn't until the 22nd of Greenleaf month, when the second set of basic magic potions was used up, that Gauda finally had some free time to temporarily end his farmer life. Rose Potion Shop. Do you sell basic magic potions? Like the Ghostlight Potion Shop, they didn't display basic magic potions on the counter, so Gauda directly asked the clerk. This time, he chose a different potion shop. Firstly, he was afraid that frequently buying basic magic potions from the same shop would attract unwanted attention. Secondly, he wanted to ensure he wouldn't be overcharged by the Ghostlight Potion Shop, although the possibility was slim. As it turned out, the clerk at the Ghostlight Potion Shop wasn't lying to him. At the Rose Potion Shop, a set of basic magic potions also cost 6 gold and 10 silver. Gauda thought for a moment and bought 6 sets, spending 39 gold. Buying only 1 or 2 sets would mean coming to the potion shop every few days, which would be inconvenient and time-consuming. However, after this large expenditure, his cash reserves dwindled to 24 gold again. Money flowed like water. They say the poor are scholars and the rich are warriors, but compared to a mage, it seemed like nothing special. After receiving the 6 packs of basic magic potions from the shop assistant, Gauda noticed a squad of city guards hurrying past on the street outside. This wasn't the first time Gauda had seen this scene today. On his way here, he had seen several squads of city guards patrolling with serious expressions. The city guards weren't usually this diligent. Has something serious happened in the city? Why are the city guards making such a big fuss today? Gauda casually asked. Sir, don't you know? Strange things have been happening in the city these past few days. The shop assistant looked surprised upon hearing this. Gauda frowned and pressed. What strange things? Many people have mysteriously disappeared in the city these past few days, leaving the Rose Potion Shop. Gauda's brow remained furrowed, his mind heavy with worry. Although Hogan City wasn't a metropolis with millions of inhabitants like in his previous life, due to the overall environment, missing persons weren't considered strange at all. It shouldn't have caused much of a stir. There are only 2 possibilities for the city guards to be so concerned. Either a person of high status has gone missing, or the number of missing persons has reached a certain threshold. Either way, it's a terrifying prospect. With this thought in mind, Gauda turned and went back to Pierre's general store. When in doubt, consult Pierre. This little old man is mysterious, and his shop is located in the bustling commercial district of Hogan City. Gauda doesn't believe he doesn't know something going on. However, these are secondary reasons. The main reason is that Pierre is his only connection in this world so far. Inside the general store, there's a family near the commercial district. The entire family has mysteriously disappeared. Sure enough, Pierre's well informed and knows some inside information. In just one night, they were lying in their home sleeping, and the next day they were all gone. The daughter of this family is the cousin of the city guard captain's wife, which is why the matter wasn't suppressed. It would have been better if we hadn't investigated. Once we did, we found something was wrong. Pierre's voice trailed off. Gauda quickly leaned closer. What do you mean? It's not just a few families. Over the past 2 weeks, more than a dozen families, dozens of people, have been sleeping in their homes, and the whole family has vanished without a trace at dawn. It's just that the families that disappeared before were from the civilian area, so no one paid attention. The city guards went to investigate, and they said they found nothing except some slime of unknown origin. There's not a single clue about the killer's identity, the missing people's fate, or how they disappeared. Pierre's expression turned serious. I wonder if anyone else will disappear tonight. If they do, things will get really serious. Gauda nodded in agreement. The city guard's actions today were so significant, clearly indicating a thorough investigation. If anyone goes missing again tonight, it would be a slap in the face to the city guards. And daring to slap the city guards like this not only proves the murderer's audacity, but also their utter lack of fear. We'll see what happens tonight, Gauda said. If nothing happens tonight, at least everyone can feel a little more at ease. Oh, by the way, boss, have you ever heard of the Seer's Magic Academy? Since he was already there, Gauda casually asked. How could I not have heard of it? Pierre didn't take Gauda's question seriously, saying casually, it's the Royal Magic Academy of this country. The Royal Magic Academy, yes, although there's only one Magic Academy in this country. Pierre nodded, inadvertently revealing another piece of information to Gauda. If you could get into it, it would be a meteoric rise. Just a Magic Academy, is it really that amazing? Gauda was skeptical. Of course it's true, Pierre said confidently. The Cyrus Academy of Magic only admits students once a year, besides those from the royal family and the children of the Shan nobility. This year's admissions are open to everyone, and there are countless applicants, but the Cyrus Academy of Magic's admission requirements are extremely strict. Without exceptional magical talent, it's impossible to be admitted. Each admissions process sees a good number of people pass the assessment, maybe 30 or 40. In most years, only a dozen or 20 pass and enter the Cyrus Academy of Magic, and 99% of those who pass the assessment become second circle mages. Entering the Cyrus Academy of Magic is like having one foot in the second circle mage's seat. Isn't that a meteoric rise? Pierre countered. Gauda could only nod silently. In Hogan City, even first circle mages were rare, let alone second circle mages. They were the elite. Is it located in the capital? Gauda asked hesitantly. Of course, where else would the Royal Academy of Magic be located if not in the capital? Pierre became interested and added, this academy was established around the same time as the capital, Saint Sen, and has a history of thousands of years. How far is it from Hogan to Saint Sen? Gauda asked, unwilling to give up. It's quite far, probably several thousand kilometers. Pierre sighed, then shook his head. Even I've never been to Saint Sen. As a citizen of the Duchy of Sen, it's a great pity that I can't see my own country's capital. Chapter 57, Hound Tracking. Although the title of Royal Academy of Magic briefly stirred an impulse in Gauda, the distance of several thousand kilometers quickly brought him back to his senses. Let alone several thousand kilometers, even Bremen, only 200 kilometers from Hogan City, was an insurmountable city for Gauda at this point. This wasn't his previous life, with its convenient transportation like high-speed rail and airplanes. Beyond the city, vast, undeveloped, and uninhabited forests teemed with danger. With slightly mixed feelings, Gauda left the commercial district and returned to the herb garden. The news he heard today still left him uneasy. Although previous disappearances had occurred in the commercial and civilian districts, who could guarantee anything? Perhaps next time it would happen in the slums, the rich areas, or even the suburbs. The wealthy residents of the city shared this concern, which was why they had put pressure on the city guards, making them so attentive. I need to arrange for people to take turns keeping watch. Although if the murderer really appears, the apprentices in the herb garden's rudimentary skills will be useless. At least it will give me some peace of mind. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep at all, Gauda thought to himself. I just want to live a peaceful life, farm, sell herbs, and develop properly. Is that so hard? At the same time, he felt a little helpless. Gauda considered himself to be quite well behaved. Even if he had some impulsive thoughts, he suppressed them all and never did anything risky. But unfortunately, even if he didn't cause trouble, things wouldn't stop happening. Hopefully, the city guards can play a role and find the murderer as soon as possible, Gauda thought. The worst-case scenario he had anticipated still occurred. Last night, despite the city guards' increased patrols and the city-wide curfew, 2 households, a total of 9 people, still mysteriously disappeared from their homes. As before, apart from some slime of unknown origin, nothing was found at the scene. It's said that this morning the city's wealthy people united to put pressure on the city guards, Pierre said solemnly to Gauda, who had come early to gather information, inside the general store. He looked worried. Who wouldn't be terrified by this? It seemed the old man wasn't entirely sure himself. Not surprising, people are always filled with fear of the unknown. Pressing the city guards is just a pretext. The real purpose is to pressure the city lord. Gata immediately saw through the ruse. The city guards obviously can't handle this. We must call upon the city's mage. If the mage intervenes, this matter should be resolved quickly. Right, only a mage with extraordinary power could resolve such a strange situation. Probably. Pierre hesitated for a moment, then nodded, still holding some hope for the mages of Hogan City. Like Gata, he hoped Hogan City would remain peaceful and free of any unusual events. Hogan City, City Council Hall. Inside the circular room, around a dark wood conference table sat 8 or 9 of the city's leaders. They wore colorful robes embroidered with their family crests, their expressions blank, revealing nothing of their thoughts. Viscount Charles, the highest leader of Hogan City, sat in the main seat, his brow furrowed. Those present represented the highest authority in Hogan City. No one, including Viscount Charles, spoke. Marlin, the captain of Hogan City's guards, was a robust middle-aged man in a well-fitting uniform, looking exceptionally sharp and imposing. Seeing no one speak, he forced a smile and broke the silence. Your Excellency, I dispatched all the city guards for night duty last night. They worked tirelessly, without slacking off or neglecting their duties, yet the disappearance still occurred silently under our watch. This matter is beyond the capabilities of the city guards. We need the mage's intervention. The others remained silent, seemingly determined to keep quiet. Viscount Charles, seated at the head of the table, frowned and sighed deeply. I thought it was just a small matter, but it's escalated so much. If this isn't resolved, everyone in the city is living in fear, and the merchants are also very unhappy. This Hogan City is, after all, our Hogan City. Let's all share our thoughts. With Viscount Charles speaking, the others naturally couldn't remain silent any longer. I suspect it's the work of feline creatures, said the old man sitting to Viscount Charles's right. He was the deputy city lord of Hogan City, the Mage King. According to the regulations of the Duchy of Zin, the highest leader of each city is a nobleman with a ducal title, that is, the local city lord. In addition, a deputy city lord with the status of a mage must be appointed. This is a mandatory requirement. Only in this way can the city be ensured to have a certain ability to withstand potential natural disasters and man-made calamities. Even in a small city like Hogan City, the deputy city lord, Mage King, is a second circle mage. Mage King, what are your thoughts? Viscount Charles asked to confirm. This doesn't seem like human intervention. Why would someone go to such lengths for just a few households? According to you, the missing people are gone, but their belongings are still there, Master King said calmly. Could it be that some mages are researching forbidden necromancy, and they're not taking the valuables to mislead people? Someone suggested. Such things weren't unheard of. Then they wouldn't dare to commit such a crime against the law. Viscount Charles dismissed the possibility. Researching forbidden necromancy was a serious crime, and it would be done covertly, not openly. But if it was the work of feline creatures, where did these creatures come from, and where did they go? Viscount Charles frowned. He had considered the possibility of feline creatures, but he hadn't found a reasonable explanation. The slums were one thing, as they were located on the city's edge. Occasionally, feline creatures would manage to break through the city walls and wreak havoc in the slums. The family that went missing a couple of days ago was clearly located in the civilian district, in the secondary center of Hogan City. If it was truly the work of feline creatures, how did they manage to cross the city's outskirts and enter the civilian district unseen? And how did they leave so quietly, or where are they hiding in the city right now? The city guards have been patrolling the city these past few days, yet they haven't discovered anything unusual. Feline creatures have a wide range of abilities, and their frequency and number of appearances outside the city have been increasing recently. The appearance of feline creatures with the ability to hide isn't hard to understand, Master King said slowly, seemingly confident. What does Master King mean? Viscount Charles, seeing Master King's seemingly comprehensive plan and arrangements, quickly and humbly inquired. Did they say there was some slime left at the scene? The Mage King said directly, if nothing unexpected happens, this slime should be left by the murderer. A single, hound tracking, spell is enough to track the murderer down based on the slime, then I'll trouble the Mage King to help. Unexpectedly, the Mage King shook his head. I don't possess hound tracking. You'll need to go to Bremen to purchase a spell scroll. Hound tracking is only a second-level spell, and the corresponding spell scroll costs only 30 gold. Money is a small matter. Finding the murderer and calming this matter down as soon as possible is the most important thing. Viscount Charles immediately slammed his fist on the table. 30 gold was indeed nothing to Viscount. I'll send someone to Bremen immediately. Chapter 58, A Visit. The disappearances in Hogan City were finally resolved. The culprit was a mage apprentice wanted for possessing forbidden magic and who had fled to Hogan City. Even after arriving, he didn't stop, continuing to plunder the local people to further his research on forbidden magic. According to Pierre, the city's mage personally intervened, capturing the culprit on the spot while he was committing his crimes. News of the culprit's capture spread quickly after deliberate propaganda. The unrest in Hogan City was brought under control. This relieved Gouda. With the strange occurrences resolved, he could finally focus on farming. Farming and development were the key. After 30 days of lush greenery, the flowers bloomed as brilliantly as flames. The green leaf month passed in the blink of an eye. Flower flame month, day 2. Seda herb garden. Inside the workshop, the table was cluttered with various items. A pile of failed attempts at concoctions of basic stamina potions filled most of the table. Gouda buried himself in his notes, meticulously recording the process and reasons for his last failure on paper. As a top student who had received a modern education, his logical thinking, analytical skills, and other comprehensive abilities already surpassed those of most people in this world. Furthermore, he had always maintained a good habit of summarizing and generalizing. The words summarize and generalize seem simple, but in reality, not only in this world, but even in his previous life, few people could do this. Countless people, whether studying or working, repeat the same mistakes they made the last time they encountered the same problem. This is commonly known as not learning from experience. In short, Gouda meticulously recorded and analyzed the process and reasons for each of his failed potion-making attempts. Before each attempt to concoct a potion, he would mentally review the process. This allowed him to maintain steady progress, always staying on the right path, even without a master's guidance and relying solely on the potion formula, despite stumbling along the way. Coupled with the potion-making talent inherited from his predecessor, and through continuous experimentation, he was getting closer and closer to successfully concocting his first basic stamina potion. This time, let's go all out and take it down in one fell swoop. Gouda reviewed his previous notes, making sure he had memorized all the points that could lead to failure, before deciding to make one last attempt of the day. He concentrated intently, placing the 3 main ingredients needed for the basic stamina potion into separate wooden bowls. First was the enchanting step. He used the mountain ironwood root for its drought-resistant and cold-resistant properties, and the blazing sun fruit for its fierce properties. He placed the enchanted blazing sun fruit kernel in a mortar, added an appropriate amount of spring water, and ground it clockwise. During the grinding process, he added wolf gland fluid to neutralize its fierce properties, but he had to ensure the fierce potion concentration wasn't too low. Previous failures had all ended here. The mixture had a pale golden hue. This time, it was a complete success. As the last auxiliary ingredient was added to the potion, a magical light flashed briefly before quickly fading. Success! With a flash of magical light, Gouda's tense spirit immediately relaxed, followed by a satisfied smile. He had finally succeeded. He successfully concocted a basic stamina potion for the first time. Although the inspiration wasn't particularly brilliant, it was simply a matter of practice. The first breakthrough was complete. All that remained was simple, albeit tedious, practice to improve proficiency. Tier 0 potions, the difficulty isn't that great. Gouda couldn't help but sigh. He arrived in this world on the 2nd day of the awakening month, February, in the year 9655 of the Nolan calendar. Now it was the 2nd day of the flower flame month, May, in 9655. Exactly 3 months, 90 days, had passed. In just 3 short months, Gouda's mastery of spells had expanded from 2 to 12, making him seem like even the mage Seda was no more than that. In the field of potion making, he had mastered both of the 2 best-selling potions from Seda's potion garden. Except for his mage level, which was lower than Seda's, Gouda had caught up with him in every other aspect. Thinking of this, Gouda felt a surge of satisfaction. The mage Seda, who was so high and mighty to him 3 months ago, now seemed not so unattainable. Don't be arrogant or impatient, don't be arrogant or impatient, Gouda reminded himself. After all, he knew that the mage Seda, whom he regarded as the big boss, was ultimately just a mage apprentice. Yes, an apprentice. He wasn't even a mage yet. And now, he was even less so. He hadn't even stepped over the threshold of the mage world. While Gauda was trying to stay humble, the summer breeze was slightly restless, blowing in through the window. There was a rapid knock on the workshop door, and with his permission, Amy pushed it open, looking nervous. "Gauda, someone's looking for you outside." Gauda's expression changed slightly. "Who? How many?" "I don't know who. 5 or 6 people. They're waiting outside the herb garden." "I understand. I'll go see." Gauda frowned, genuinely wondering who had come looking for him. Looking for him? Unlikely. Of all the acquaintances he knew in Hogan City, only Pierre was there. Looking for the mage Seda? Even less likely. Through the letter left by the mage Seda, God had confirmed that Seda had been in seclusion in Hogan City for the past 10 years, diligently researching psychic potions, and had not engaged in any social activities. He had come to Hogan City as a refugee, too busy concealing his identity to reveal his location to acquaintances. If it wasn't him, and if it wasn't Seda, then who could be visiting? As God pondered this, he crossed a corridor and arrived at the courtyard of the herb garden. Outside the gate, 5 or 6 figures were already positioned. God opened the gate. Leading them was a middle-aged man dressed in luxurious attire. Behind him stood 5 people. 4 were dressed in hemp clothing, clearly thugs, while the last one was familiar to God, a clerk from Phil's potion shop. Upon seeing Gauda emerge, the shop assistant immediately stepped forward and introduced him. "This is our manager, Mr. Oliver. I hope you won't mind my sudden visit." Oliver looked at Gauda with a faint smile. "Manager, you flatter me." Gauda, still unaware of the other's purpose, forced a smile, speaking neither humbly nor arrogantly. "It's an honor for the herb garden to have you visit. It's just that Master Seda has been away on business and hasn't returned yet. If you have other matters to attend to, perhaps you could come another day after Master Seda's return. It seems that with Master Seda absent, the herb garden is temporarily under your management." Oliver clapped his hands. "Since you're already here, I might as well make the most of it. The reason I've come today is for one thing, which I hope you will convey to Master Seda upon his return." "What is it?" "The light, Rose, and our Phil's potion shop have shared the Hogan City potions market for many years. We 3 have competed openly and covertly countless times over the years, each hoping to dominate the market," Oliver calmly stated. "It's just that the 3 of us are roughly equal in strength and resources, and with each other checking and balancing the others, we haven't been able to reach a conclusion." Gauda knew this very well. A triangle is the most stable. However, recently, due to the changes outside the city, the potion market in Hogan City has become increasingly prosperous. This is an opportunity, and our store plans to seize this opportunity to expand. Oliver narrowed his eyes. "The first step to expansion is expansion, isn't it? Our store has been cooperating with your Seda Potion Garden for nearly 10 years, and I highly approve of the abilities of Mage Seda. Our store intends to acquire your potion garden and hire Mage Seda as our potion master. As for the price, it's negotiable, nothing else, just lots of money." Gauda remained silent. He could tell that this Oliver, though called a store manager, was actually just a high-level employee in the end, with a real big boss behind him. Chapter 59 Hostile Takeover. "All right, I will convey your message to Master Seda when he returns." God naturally didn't want to sell the herb garden, especially since Master Seda was no longer with him. However, given the situation, he couldn't think of a solution immediately and could only resort to stalling. He mentioned before he left that he was going away because his research on potion formulas hadn't yielded results, and he decided to take a break and visit his family. He didn't know when he would return. Hearing this, Oliver's expression changed. God noticed a subtle change in the other's expression, his heart tightening slightly, but he continued nonchalantly. "I have mastered all of Master Seda's potion-making knowledge, which is why he temporarily entrusted the herb garden to me until he returns." Upon hearing this, Oliver's eyes suddenly lit up, but with a hint of doubt. "You mean you have mastered all of Master Seda's potion-making knowledge?" It was clear he was reserved and skeptical. After all, God still looked too young. Gauda nodded firmly. "Master Seda has already taught me both the basic spider venom potion and the basic endurance potion, and I have mastered them completely. If that's the case, we'd be happy to hire you as our potion maker," Oliver said with a smile. "Also, if Master Seda doesn't return soon, it's not unreasonable for you to make some decisions." Oliver pretended to survey the herb garden, then held up 2 fingers of his right hand, indicating 200 gold coins. "I'm willing to pay 200 gold coins to buy your herb garden." Hearing this price, God couldn't help but grit his teeth inwardly. Putting aside everything else, Master Seda had spent more than 200 gold coins when he acquired this herb garden, not to mention the various renovations and constructions that followed. Add to that the 4 carefully cultivated, consistently producing herb fields, and 200 gold coins wouldn't be an exaggeration. The mage only entrusted me with the temporary management of the herb garden. How could I dare make such a decision on my own? This matter should be decided after Mage Seda returns. Although he was seething with resentment, God still smiled and said, "That's true," Oliver said casually, "but opportunities have time limits. I'm in a great hurry and can't give you much time. You should think it over carefully. I think even if Mage Seda returns by then, he'll understand your decision. After all, joining our Phil's potion shop is a great blessing." After saying this with a smile, Oliver waved his hand, boarded the carriage parked under a tree, and left leisurely. Smiling Tiger God cursed inwardly after seeing Oliver and his party off. He had clearly sensed Oliver's malicious intent for a moment, which was why he had proactively revealed that he had inherited all of Mage Seda's potion-making knowledge. This was both to demonstrate his value and to keep the other party in check. Only by having value would the other party think twice before acting. But how long this period of deliberation would last, and how effective it would be, was uncertain. Gold, what do we do? Amy, who had witnessed the entire process, couldn't maintain Gold's composure. She was already panicked, only managing to keep a facade of calm in front of others. Now that Oliver and his group were gone, she could no longer hold back and blurted out, "Master Seda has already, don't tell anyone else about this yet. Let me think." Gold knew Amy's meaning and could only give this instruction. Phil's potion shop, 2nd floor. A long table made of mahogany divided the room into 2 spaces. Behind the table stood a dignified man. His eyes were deep set, his brow bone slightly raised, and his beard neatly trimmed. He wore a custom-made robe made of a deep purple, high-quality fabric, with an unreadable emblem embroidered on his chest. Clearly, he was a person of extremely high status. Oliver, the owner of the potion shop, stood respectfully before the long table, showing none of the smugness he had displayed during the day at Seda's herb garden. "Your Excellency, today I visited the Seda herb garden and the Iberian herb garden on the outskirts of the city. The Iberian herb garden has agreed to cede the garden to me, but the situation with the Seda herb garden is more complicated." "How so?" the man addressed as the Baron asked. "When I went there, I didn't see their leader, Master Seda. According to the apprentices in the herb garden, Master Seda had gone back to his hometown to visit relatives, but I suspect that Master Seda wasn't actually going back home. He's already died of old age, and the apprentices in the herb garden have kept that secret. Master Seda was already quite old. The last time he came to the shop to pick up the spirit bone powder, I was the one who served him. At that time, his complexion was extremely pale and ashen. He looked like he was about to die. Furthermore, Master Seda has spent the last 10 years researching his high-level magical potions, investing countless amounts of money and energy. He's become obsessed, determined to achieve his goal. Why would someone like that suddenly stop his research and choose to go back home to visit relatives? Besides, it's uncertain whether an old mage who has lived a secluded life for 10 years still has any relatives alive. Who would believe he went back home to visit relatives? Besides, even though he claims to be visiting relatives, I've sent people to the city's post stations to inquire, and there's no record of that Master Seda renting horses from the post stations or carriage shops. That old master is so old, how could he possibly travel such a long distance without renting horses or carriages? Could he even walk? Most likely, as I said, he's already died of old age in his herb garden. These apprentices are just incredibly audacious and delusional, trying to create the illusion that the old master is still alive so they can continue operating his herb garden. I must say, if you hadn't instructed me to start acquiring and annexing the city's herb gardens, I wouldn't have even noticed this Seda herb garden. They almost pulled it off. I went there today to investigate. If I can confirm that the old master is no longer alive, I'll fabricate a charge against these apprentices, throw them in jail for a while, and directly seize the unclaimed herb garden. A bunch of apprentices who were born beggars. They're no match for me. Then why didn't you take action? The imposing man sitting behind the long table finally asked after listening for a while. There was a slight mishap. There's an apprentice in the herb garden who claims to have inherited all the old mage's potion-making knowledge. The apprentice looks extremely young, probably only 13 or 14. If what he says is true, I think he has great potential. So I've temporarily abandoned the idea and decided to observe further. Such talent should be allowed to join Phil's potion shop to make potions for us. With his age and talent in potion making, who knows how much money he can make for us in the future. Sending him to jail for a little money would be short-sighted, so I thought it would be better to acquire their herb garden in a more peaceful way. I see. The imposing man tapped his knuckles lightly on the table. That's not wrong. Get this done as quickly as possible. Don't make any mistakes, otherwise, rest assured, Baron, I will handle this matter perfectly. It won't be long before he agrees to transfer the herb garden to me and become the potion master of our shop. Chapter 60 Pierre's Speculation. Flower Flame Moon, the 15th. A bright magical light flashed across the potion. Gauda listlessly bottled his successfully obtained basic stamina potion, showing no sign of joy. After putting the potion away, Gauda felt restless and couldn't calm down. Since Oliver's visit, Phil's potion shop had stopped buying basic spider venom potions from their plantation. Their explanation was that due to increased sales of basic spider venom potions, potion makers in the city were primarily focusing on concocting them. Furthermore, the potion shop had been buying in large quantities, and their stockpile was now saturated, hence the suspension. Gauda was skeptical, but the explanation seemed plausible, so he let it go. Since he already knew how to concoct basic stamina potions, he simply abandoned the spider venom potion altogether, bought 20 portions of wolf gland fluid, and switched to concocting basic stamina potions. Unexpectedly, when he brought the prepared basic stamina potion to Phil's potion shop, they still refused to buy it. This time, the reason given was, from this day forward, our shop will only sell potions made by our own potion makers and will no longer cooperate with potion makers outside our shop. At this point, Gauda understood perfectly well that the talk of saturated stockpiles was all nonsense. The essence was to force him to relinquish his herb garden, and simultaneously force him to join Phil's potion shop and concoct potions for them. And that wasn't all. After this unpleasant encounter, Gauda noticed some loitering people outside the herb garden. The Seda herb garden was located on the outskirts of Hogan City, a secluded, detached house. There were no amenities or shops nearby. Even to buy food, the apprentices had to travel for half an hour to the market and commercial district in the city center. Under normal circumstances, where would loitering people come from in such a place? Clearly, these loitering people were from Phil's potion shop. Their intention was obvious, to monitor and intimidate Gauda. This was a combination of coercion and bribery. The problem was, Oliver's methods were indeed effective. Although God still had some savings, without the income from potions, his herb garden would eventually go bankrupt if he continued to live off his savings. At that point, what other options did he have besides joining Phil's potion shop? As for resistance, what could a first-class mage apprentice possibly have to resist? God even secretly rejoiced that he had been cautious and demonstrated his value in time. Otherwise, he wouldn't be facing coercion and bribery now. But what should he do now? The more God thought about it, the more frustrated he became. Should he swallow his anger and hand over the herb garden to them? That seemed like the best decision at the moment. After all, they had offered a purchase price of 200 gold and highly valued his potential. If he really joined Phil's potion shop, they would most likely focus on training him. Although they would certainly impose many restrictions, with Wind Spirit Moon Shadow around, as long as he endured for a few years, he should be able to break free from these restrictions. From this perspective, it was indeed a good choice. However, Gauda had never considered this option. Simply put, he didn't want to suffer this humiliation. If his mind wasn't clear, no amount of reasoning would matter. As Gauda pondered, he pulled out his purse, counted his cash, and found his current balance. 12 gold, 2 silver, and 5 copper. I need to make a decision quickly. The next day, Gauda left the herb garden with a package. Should we follow? No, we were just instructed to keep an eye on the herb garden. Seeing Gauda head towards the city, the two people monitoring the herb garden glanced at him, then looked away without making any further move. Although they were practically openly monitoring him, they hadn't gone so far as to directly follow him, preserving a shred of dignity. Commercial District. Pierre's General Store. Gauda, carrying potions he had stockpiled for several days, noticed before even stepping into the store that the contents of the simple wooden sign at the entrance had changed. This shop will be closing soon, and all items will be sold at low prices. It had only been a week since he'd last visited, and Pierre was already planning to close down his general store. Gauda was taken aback, forgetting his original purpose of selling medicine. and hurriedly entered the shop. It was visibly that many of the shelves were already empty. "You're leaving?" As soon as Gouda entered, he saw Pierre leisurely drinking tea behind the counter and asked directly, "Going to Bremen?" "Yes, I'm already looking for a new owner for the shop. Once I find one, I'll leave and go to Bremen to enjoy my retirement." Pierre gulped down his tea, put down his cup, and replied. "What's going on?" Gouda frowned, a bad feeling creeping into his heart. "The strange disappearances in the city haven't been resolved," Pierre announced. "Didn't you say the murderer was already?" Gouda replied subconsciously, then suddenly realized, "Just a scapegoat?" "Yes, just a scapegoat. The strange disappearances have been suppressed, not resolved," Pierre nodded, giving an affirmative answer. "People are still disappearing in the city." He paused. 3 days ago, a family living on the same street as me mysteriously disappeared. The situation was exactly the same as before. The family was sleeping at home, and when they woke up the next day, they were gone. Their neighbor discovered it first, and everyone gathered to see what was going on. I also took a look at the scene before the city guards arrived. Aside from some strange slime, nothing was left in the room, and the items in the room were very tidy. It was definitely not a robbery. I suspect this wasn't done by humans, but by a leline creature that has never appeared in the Bremen region before. That's why even a second-ring mage couldn't solve it. There are leline creatures lurking in the shadows in the city center, constantly committing crimes. It's terrifying." After a moment of silence, Gouda spoke again. "Just because of that?" "Not entirely. The main reason," Pierre sighed, then continued, "didn't I go to Bremen last month to arrange my escape route? Besides that, I also checked some information through my friend in the Emerald Alliance. Under normal circumstances, there's an upper limit to the number of leline creatures that can gather in each region, depending on the different magic concentrations, but recently, the number of leline creatures appearing outside the city has exceeded the total number that should exist in this area. Do you know what this means?" Before God could reply, Pierre answered his own question. "This means that the frequent appearance of leline creatures outside the city isn't simply due to their gathering, but rather the emergence of leline creatures from a new source, and leline creatures can only come from leylines." Pierre said something that seemed inexplicable at the end, but God suddenly understood, his face changing drastically. "You mean the anomaly outside the city is caused by the formation of new leylines?" He clearly remembered a sentence in the Bremen Gazetteer he had bought. After the planes converged, leylines began to form frequently, their numbers increasing daily, and leyline creatures emerged. However, the Bremen region has not seen any new leylines form for 200 years. King Jairus Zai once praised Bremen as a blessed land, or is it no longer blessed? I'm not sure, but I think it's very likely, at least now. There's a high probability that a new species of leyline creature has invaded Hogan City. Doesn't this match my guess? The formation of new leylines has brought new leyline creatures, God murmured, understanding Pierre's meaning. Chapter 61 3 Essential Survival Techniques for Mages in the Wilderness. Bremen hasn't seen any leylines form for too long, so everyone's become complacent and has developed a blind spot, not even considering this possibility. Pierre sighed. Leyline formation takes time, and the accumulation of magic and an increase in leyline creatures are among the precursors. Of course, perhaps, as most people think now, these anomalies are simply caused by high-level magical plants attracting leyline creatures, and it's all just my oversensitivity, Pierre said earnestly, but I'm too old to gamble. By the time the leylines are fully formed, it will be too late to leave. Besides, if the strange disappearances and other incidents in the city aren't resolved, nobody knows when something strange will happen to them. Living in constant fear isn't a good thing. There's no such thing as being able to guard against thieves for 1,000 days. So, after much thought, I've decided to leave. You should think about it carefully too. Pierre hesitated for a moment, then gently advised. Gouda's mind raced, and he nodded simultaneously, saying, I will. Let's not talk about that. What brings you here today? Pierre waved his hand and asked. Gouda tightened the bundle on his back and said honestly, I was thinking of getting another batch of potions from you, but given your current situation, it's not a good time. Clearly, Pierre was busy clearing out his stock and had no reason to restock. Haha, you've been getting your stock all this time. Why don't you take a look at my shop's inventory today? Pierre laughed. The prices of most items are currently at cost price or even at a loss. It's a great deal. Gouda glanced at the shop's merchandise, then shook his head apologetically. I don't need anything right now. Pierre thought for a moment, then suddenly leaned closer to Gouda and asked in a low voice, What about spell recipes, huh? Gada exclaimed in surprise. Pierre had already settled into a chair behind the counter, and said slowly, I wonder if you've ever heard of the 3 essential spells for wilderness survival for mages? 3 essential spells for wilderness survival? What are those? Clearly, Gada hadn't heard of them. Lacking a systematic mage education meant his limited knowledge. They refer to the 3 spells: water creation, northward guidance, and purify food. When I was young and still adventuring, I finally managed to collect these 3 spells. At this point, the old man's expression turned nostalgic, reminiscing about his youth. As you know, the Brahmin region has very little developed area. Most of it is undeveloped primeval forest and wasteland, but whether hunting leeline creatures or searching for precious magical plants, you need to venture into these primeval forests. You hunted leeline creatures when you were young? Gada was surprised, never expecting this lazy old man to have been so passionate in his youth. No wonder Pierre, an ordinary general store owner, knew so much. So he was a hero in his youth too. Of course, any aspiring mage, unless born into a noble family, has to risk their life to earn money, right? Pierre said matter-of-factly. You should know how much money a mage's cultivation consumes. Only by hunting leeline creatures and gathering magical plants can one possibly earn enough resources for cultivation. Money earned through ordinary methods is simply not enough for the needs of cultivation. Gada nodded in deep agreement. Putting aside the boss that was Mage Seda, his starting point was already better than many people's, starting with a herb garden. With such a stable asset as a herb garden, he was still only a first-class apprentice. Even so, he often lamented how difficult it was to live when faced with the resources needed for cultivation. It's easy to imagine how luxurious a profession a mage is. Back then, to earn some money, I would often spend at least half a month at a time in the primeval forest. Surviving in the primeval forest for so long would be impossible without the aid of magic. As he spoke, Pierre glanced outside the shop several times to make sure no one was around before opening the drawer behind the counter. Inside were 3 booklets. 3 spell recipes. Clearly, Pierre had been prepared, waiting for God to arrive. Take a look first, we'll talk about the rest later. God quickly took the 3 spell recipes and began browsing. Water creation conjuration, 0 ring. This spell creates 2 gallons. This increases with a mage's rank, of clean, drinkable water, like clean rainwater. You can create water in an area of a suitable size to hold the liquid, or an area 3 times the size of the above. This water may pour down like rain, or fill many smaller containers. If the water is not consumed, it will disappear after 1 day. Note, each gallon, approximately 4.8 liters, of water weighs about 8 pounds. 1 cubic foot can hold 8 gallons of water, weighing approximately 60 pounds. Northward spell, prophecy, 0th ring. When you cast this spell, you will instantly know which direction is north from your current location. This spell only tells you north for a moment. If you don't use landmarks to maintain your orientation, you may lose your way again. Purify food, alteration, 0th ring. This spell can purify 1 cubic foot, increases with a mage's rank, of spoiled, rotten, infected, poisonous, or otherwise contaminated food and water into an edible and drinkable state. This spell cannot prevent subsequent natural decay or spoilage. Unholy water and similar foods and drinks will lose their effect after being purified, but this spell is ineffective against any type of creature or magical potion. Putting down the spell recipes, Gada understood why these 3 spells were called the 3 essential spells for a mage's survival in the wild. Survival boils down to 4 points: eating, drinking, lodging, and transportation. These 3 spells correspond perfectly to 3 of these: eating, drinking, and transportation. Water creation ensures drinking water. Northward guidance ensures he won't get lost in the complex environment of the primeval forest. And food purification guarantees food to a certain extent. Strictly speaking, the third of the 3 essential spells shouldn't be food purification, but rather food creation. However, food creation is a 3rd circle spell with a very high barrier to entry, so food purification has to be used instead. Pierre explained again. How much? Gada asked, clutching the spell formula tightly. With 3 such practical spells before him, how could he not be tempted? Didn't I tell you, privately trading spell formulas is officially prohibited, and I don't do anything illegal. Pierre's answer surprised Gada. In his view, Pierre's question meant he wanted to sell him the spell formula. After all, The reason Pierre refused to trade spell formulas privately was because his shop was located there. If you were reported for trading spell formulas, his shop would be shut down, a risk far too great compared to the potential profits. But now that Pierre's general store was preparing to close down, he shouldn't have such concerns anymore. Besides, they'd already presented the spell formulas, clearly waiting for him. Why wouldn't they sell them? They couldn't be playing him for fools, could they? Before Gauda could even figure it out, Pierre laughed heartily. So, I'll just give you these 3 spell formulas. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Sewer. If it's a gift, it's not a transaction. If it's not a transaction, then there's no prohibition. So, that's fine. The problem is, why would someone give you something so precious for free? Gauda asked himself this question, and he also wanted to ask Pierre. To be honest, he already owed Pierre many favors, and he felt he couldn't repay Pierre in any way. Seeing Gauda's momentary hesitation, Pierre seemed to understand what Gauda was thinking and comforted him. Just accept it. You'll definitely need these 3 spells. That little bit of money is useless to me. It's the same whether I have it or not. After thinking for a moment, Pierre took out paper and pen from beside the counter, scribbled a few lines, and handed them to Gauda. What's this? Gauda took the note, not yet understanding. This is my lodging in Bremen, Pierre explained. If you ever go to Bremen and can't find a place to stay, you can come find me. Of course, if you go too late, I can't guarantee I'll still be there. The old man laughed heartily. Gauda remained silent for a moment, then put away the note, patted his chest, bowed his head sincerely, and said, "Thank you." After seeing Gauda off, watching his back, carrying the bundle, disappear from sight, Pierre took a sip of tea, his gaze already wandering. Among mages, there's a widely circulated saying, spells are a private realm open only to geniuses. But those who have truly experienced it know that spells are even more of a private realm open only to the wealthy. Low talent doesn't necessarily preclude becoming a high-level mage. But without money, becoming a high-level mage is absolutely impossible. It's often said that cultivating magic is difficult, but the degree of difficulty varies drastically. For commoners, making a living is difficult enough. The difficulty of cultivating magic is hundreds or even thousands of times greater than for those from wealthy families. He too was born a commoner, and through his own efforts, he had barely managed to carve out a small path. Now his path had come to an end, and seeing Gauda at this moment was like seeing his younger self. In his youth, he desperately hoped someone would lend a helping hand, but he never had that luck. Since that's the case, he might as well be the one to lend a hand. It's just a small, effortless favor anyway. Pierre remained silent, poured himself another cup of tea, and gulped it down. Signs of frequent ley line regeneration, abundant magic power, increased ley line creatures, and missing people. On his way back, Gauda kept repeating these keywords in his mind, feeling as if he had grasped some key point, but then overlooked it. He couldn't figure it out even after returning to the herb garden. He stepped into the herb garden with a heavy heart. Somewhat troubled, Gauda first went to the herb field to check on the seedlings he had planted some time ago. Onichi and Raymond were tending to the seedlings, loosening the soil and fertilizing them, chatting as they worked. Onichi, when you were practicing the guidance technique these days, did you notice that the magic concentration seemed to have increased a lot for some reason? Raymond asked casually. Indeed, these past few days, 2 hours of practice have almost equaled 3 hours of practice before. It's so awesome, Onichi exclaimed. I don't know what's going on, why worry about it? It's a good thing anyway. The two chatted idly. Gauda, however, froze. The magic concentration has increased significantly. He immediately turned around, returned to his room, sat cross-legged, and quickly entered the meditative state of channeling magic. As usual, countless stardust appeared in Gauda's consciousness, drifting around him. However, this time he could clearly sense that the amount of stardust was almost 50% more than before. The next moment, Gauda abruptly opened his eyes filled with surprise. During this time, he had been practicing channeling magic using basic magic potions. Because drinking magic potions eliminated the step of channeling magic into his body from the outside, He had only learned from his 2 apprentices today that the magic concentration in the environment had inexplicably increased so much. How could the magic concentration increase like this? Before the question could fully form, Gata had already thought of the answer. It's magic enrichment. The 2 major signs of ley line regeneration, magic enrichment and an increase in ley line creatures, had both been confirmed at this moment. The herb garden is located in the suburbs, far from the city center and close to the wilderness, so it can be the first to sense changes in magic concentration. He also understood why such obvious changes in magic concentration hadn't been noticed by the city's important figures, including Pierre. That's because they lived in a location slightly off-center from the center of Hogan City, where the effects of the magic enrichment hadn't yet reached. A new ley line is really about to emerge, right outside Hogan City, although he wasn't entirely certain. In God's view, it was a high-probability event. God got up and paced around the room. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. The phenomenon of magic enrichment has already affected the herb garden, indicating that the formation of the ley line must have begun long ago. Wait, God thought of something else. 2 months ago, at Pierre's general store, a city guard came to deliver a notice. At the time, the city guard's exact words were, "The number of swamp worms in the city's sewers has recently increased sharply and they are unusually active. If we replace the dark swamp worm with its actual identity as a ley line creature, wouldn't it perfectly match the anomaly that has persisted outside the city for so long?" Moreover, judging from this, the anomaly actually appeared in the city 2 months ago. The sewers. Subconsciously recalling his experience in the sewers, a pair of deep red eyes suddenly flashed into Gauda's mind. The question that had troubled Gauda for so long was now answered. He might have found out where the ley line creature causing the strange events in the city came from and where it was hiding. 2 months ago, he went into the sewers to help Pierre clean out the dark swamp worms, obtaining his second source from them. When he left, he vaguely saw a pair of deep red eyes in the sewers. However, at the time, the threat from the Mage Sata was so obvious that he didn't have the mind to dwell on it, and as time passed, he had forgotten about it until now, when it suddenly came back to him. How did the ley line creature bypass the outer perimeter of Hogan City and reach its center? How did they manage to hide so well, without leaving a trace? This was something Pierre and the city's bigwigs couldn't figure out. The answer was actually ridiculously simple: the sewers. With people everywhere on the surface, it was difficult to infiltrate the city center undetected. The only way was through the underground sewers. The city guards searched high and low, but couldn't find any hiding place for the possible ley line creatures, because they had never searched the sewers. Why did the strange disappearances always happen in the civilian and commercial areas, while the slums remained untouched? Because Hogan City's sewer system was underdeveloped, only the wealthier areas had rudimentary facilities. The slums had no sewer system at all. The poor simply dumped their wastewater into the streets and nearby rivers. This wasn't the only reason Gauda felt disgusted when passing through the slums. The so-called slime left at the scene was probably just sewage from the sewers, right? Everything made sense now. Chapter 63 Symbiosis. It was past 10 o'clock at night. Hogan City was already fast asleep by this time. Except for a few drunkards and certain special professionals who only ventured out at night, most people were sound asleep at home, not wandering outside. The night was very quiet, broken only by the occasional chirping of birds and insects, or the noise of drunkards. Gauda quietly left the herb garden from the backyard, his steps extremely light and swift as he headed towards the city center. He passed through the filthy and chaotic slums, occasionally spotting a few figures. The slums were known for their restless people at night. Soon, Gauda arrived at the relatively safer and cleaner civilian residential area. He used to wander around Hogan City after each medicine sale. Therefore, compared to when he first arrived in this world, Gauda was now quite familiar with Hogan City. So, Gauda quickly found his target, a sewer entrance in the civilian area. Gauda scanned his surroundings and quickly found a suitable spot. Opposite the sewer entrance stood a lush roadside tree. He quickly approached the roadside trees, drawing on his childhood tree climbing experience, and scrambled up in a few steps, concealing himself in the shade. Once he was certain the branches and leaves completely obscured his figure, leaving no trace even his shadow, Gauda cautiously parted the branches and stared intently at the sewer entrance. His purpose was clear: to finally verify his suspicions and try to uncover the true identity of the culprit behind the city's strange occurrences. The city's sewer entrances weren't particularly numerous, but they weren't few either. So, waiting for the rabbit to run into the tree stump still carried an element of luck. However, Gauda couldn't think of any better method. He remained perched in the tree for over an hour. The moon rose above the willow branches. Just as Gauda was beginning to feel sleepy, a faint rustling sound reached his ears. This jolted him awake, all his drowsiness vanishing. He widened his eyes, looking in the direction of the sound, the sewer entrance. To Gauda's horrified gaze, a swarm of black rats emerged from the dimly lit entrance, barely wide enough for one person to pass through. These rats were of normal size. Unlike the terrifying wolves and rats that had raided the herb garden earlier, they looked no different from the most common rats. However, the appearance of so many rats in the darkness was itself an extremely eerie event. After leaving the sewer entrance, these rats surged in one direction like a tide. In a short while, this large swarm of rats disappeared from Gauda's sight, vanishing into the night. Having witnessed this horrifying scene, Gauda waited silently. About half an hour later, under the moonlight, countless black dots reappeared, surging towards the sewer entrance. As the dots grew larger and larger in Gauda's vision, until he could clearly see the rats' shapes, Gauda couldn't help but gasp. Moonlight pierced through the sparse clouds, illuminating the eerie scene before him. These rats, lined up in a row, moved with perfect unison, carrying several humans who appeared to be unconscious or asleep. 1, 2, 3, Gauda counted, assessing the number of humans being carried by the strange swarm. Despite the violent movement, the three showed no signs of waking. The rats, with a clear objective, carried the three to the entrance of the sewer. And then, Gauda couldn't imagine what the rats would do next. Lead these three into the sewer? What was the purpose? The next moment, Gauda's questions were answered. With a whoosh, a streak of blood-red light shot out from the dark sewer entrance. By the moonlight, Gauda saw the true form of the blood-red light. It was a blood-red vine. The blood-red vine extended from the sewer, coiling towards one of the three humans carried by the rats. Sharp thorns on the vine, like teeth, pierced the human's skin. Then, the blood in the human's body gushed out like a stream, rapidly absorbed by the vines. Correspondingly, the body was visibly shriveling up. A chill ran from the soles of Gauda's feet, quickly spreading throughout his body. His breathing became heavy. In just a few minutes, a living person had become a pale, withered corpse right before Gauda's eyes. The vines, having drunk the blood, stretched out their branches and leaves. Though clearly a vine, Gauda seemed to sense it releasing a joyful and contented emotion. At the same time, a faint red mist rose from the vine's branches and leaves, spreading and flowing into the rats' bodies. The next moment, a familiar yet horrifying scene unfolded before Gauda's eyes. Nourished by the red mist, the rats' eyes turned a strange, deep red, like burning rubies, shimmering with an ominous light in the night. Just like the two crimson dots Gauda had glimpsed when leaving the sewers last time. In the darkness, so many crimson eyes gleamed eerily, sending chills down one's spine. Symbiosis, Gauda murmured to himself. Clearly, the rats and this strange plant had a classic symbiotic relationship. The strange plant, possessing the characteristics of a plant, was immobile and needed the rats to hunt for it. The rats, in turn, needed the strange red mist released after the plant had eaten its food. Although its exact function was unknown, it was certainly beneficial to them. Seeing that the vines were temporarily full and the red-eyed rats had also enjoyed the red mist, a small group of rats separated and grabbed the clothes of the mummified corpse, dragging it into the sewer. Soon, the mummified corpse fell straight down the sewer entrance and disappeared into the sewer. At this moment, Gauda had obtained the truth about everything related to this strange case of missing persons, the murderer, the crime, and the whereabouts of the body. He even corrected his previous judgment. Why had the city's bigwigs been unable to solve the missing persons case for so long? It wasn't necessarily because they hadn't considered the possibility of the sewers. It was just that unless they happened to witness the red-eyed form of the rats, under normal circumstances, even if the city guards searched the sewers and saw these rats with their own eyes, how could they connect such seemingly harmless and normal rats with a murderer? The existence of rats in the sewers was perfectly normal. This disguise was too natural. And on the field, this feeding was not over yet. After a brief pause, the vine, as if it had finished digesting, began to move again. The target was undoubtedly one of the remaining two people. Whoosh! Just as the vine moved, a blazing light burst forth in the night, piercing the stuffy air and striking the swarm of rats gathered beside the vine. It was an arrow-shaped flame. The flaming arrow exploded with a deafening roar and a blinding flash the instant it struck its target rat. The flames spread rapidly, engulfing a small group of red-eyed rats at the epicenter. The rats scattered in terror at the sudden onslaught of fire. Screams mingled with the crackling of the flames. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning. For what's that sound? It's coming from over there. Let's go check it out. The rapid, chaotic, yet powerful footsteps echoed. The explosion and flash, strikingly loud in the still night, quickly drew the attention of a patrol of city guards just a street away. Seemingly alerted by the guards, the red-eyed rats disregarded everything else and, amidst a flurry of squeaks, darted into the sewer entrance and vanished. The charred corpses of the dead rats were picked up by the surviving red-eyed rats and carried back into the sewers. The eerie vines moved even faster, disappearing along the sewer entrance with a whoosh. At the same time, a figure leaped down from the roadside tree opposite the entrance and quickly disappeared into the night. They scattered like birds and beasts. Chapter 64, Flaming Arrow. Gauda sprinted through the night. Fortunately, after more than a month of training in dietary supplements, his physical condition had improved significantly. Even so, by the time he was far from the civilian area, he was already panting heavily. No one should have noticed, but with the existence of supernatural powers like magic, the fact that no one noticed me on the spot doesn't mean I won't be tracked down, but even if they do track me down, I'll be fine. Essentially, I was saving someone, so from any angle, they can't cause me any trouble. At most, it will just reveal that I possess the flame arrow spell. After sorting out his thoughts and confirming that his actions wouldn't bring him any harm, Gauda finally breathed a sigh of relief. As the strange vine coiled towards the second person, he, hiding in a roadside tree, noticed a light coming from the next street. He knew it was a lantern used by the patrolling city guards. Since he could see the light, it meant the city guards were nearby. Under these circumstances, Gauda decisively made his move. Being separated by a street was enough to ensure he could leave before the city guards arrived. This distance was just enough to ensure the city guards would notice the commotion and leave quickly. As for the vine, it was already remarkable that it could extend from the sewer to the entrance. Gauda didn't believe it could cross dozens of meters and continue tracking him. Having said all that, in the blink of an eye, who would have thought of such details? Essentially, witnessing a monster slaughtering its own kind before his eyes triggered his instinctive reaction. Even the spell, Flame Arrow, was a subconscious choice. Only this spell could create enough noise to attract the city guard's attention. Everything afterward was a result of calm reflection. Although the main purpose was to save people, there were unexpected gains. Wind Spirit Moon Shadow, Gauda thought to himself. A simple information interface instantly appeared in his mind. A new entry appeared in the Origin section, Origin. 0 rings, Masked Rat, 7-7. The scientific name of that red-eyed monster rat was actually, Masked Rat. A very unexpected name. It looks weak, and isn't actually that powerful, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a Leeline creature. As long as one possesses Leeline creature blood, they enter the 0-ring tier, which provides Origin. Gauda wasn't sure how many red-eyed monster rats called Masked Rat he had just killed with his Flame Arrow spell, but it was at least 7. So, without any preparation, Gauda gained his third point of Origin. It's a pleasant surprise. Saving a life is better than building a 7-story pagoda. This is what I deserve. If it doesn't affect his normal life, it's always good to do good deeds. For example, tonight's intervention, even without the unexpected gain of Origin, saving 2 people made Gauda feel truly happy. It was already past midnight when he returned to the herb garden. On the way back, Gauda had already made his decision. After this ordeal in the sewers, he was almost certain that the regeneration of the Leelines was the source of the anomalies outside the city. This place was not safe to stay. Once the ley lines are fully formed, the swarms of ley line creatures that emerge will be far beyond what a small city like Hogan City can handle. Worse still, the herb garden is located on the outskirts of Hogan City. This means he'll likely be among the first lucky ones to be attacked by the ley line creatures. Old foxes are indeed shrewd. Gauda couldn't help but sigh, thinking of Pierre, who is already selling off his fixed assets in preparation for fleeing to Bremen. I'm going, but where to go and how to get there needs careful consideration. Gauda's eyes flashed, and he made a decision. After all this commotion, drowsiness returned to Gauda, but he didn't immediately lie down to rest. Because there was still one thing he hadn't done. Wind Spirit Moon Shadow, Gauda murmured to himself. The rudimentary information interface reappeared. Spells. 0 level, Hand of the Mage, Repair Plus, Acid Splash Plus, Freezing Ray, Increase Resistance, Fire Arrow, Tracking Mark, Flash of Light, Touch of Fatigue, Detect Magic, Read Magic, Blade Protection, in the dazzling spell bar, except for Repair Plus and Acid Splash Plus. The other 10 spell attributes each had a small plus sign flashing continuously. It was like a lure. Hey sir, click on me, you little bastards, one day I'll click on all of you, Gouda muttered viciously to himself. At points, then, Gouda's mind locked onto Fire Arrow. Output, output, output. A mage must first maximize his output before considering anything else. More importantly, adding points to damage spells would benefit Gouda in acquiring new source energy. After all, the most reliable way to acquire source energy is by hunting Leeline creatures. Flame Arrow is currently the highest damage spell wielded by the High Lord. In an instant, the Big Dipper, representing the origin of the Maso Rat, emerged from within the Wind Spirit Moon shadow. It merged into the spell model of Flame Arrow like lightning. New branches were generated on the basis of the original spell model of Flame Arrow. The spell model, which originally consisted of 10 stars, was instantly expanded to 19 stars. In the spell bar, the Flame Arrow entry flashed, the plus sign after the entry disappeared, and its name became Flame Arrow Plus. Flame Arrow, evocation, 0 rings, you throw a flaming arrow at a creature or object within 120 feet, 40 meters, performing a ranged spell attack on the target. If it hits, the target takes fire damage. Flammable objects hit by the spell will be ignited. Bonus, after Flame Arrow is fired, you can change the direction of the spell trajectory up to once as needed. This is yet another unexpected but extremely practical enhancement. As an instant damage spell, Flame Arrow, according to standard rules, once aimed at a target point by the caster, will fly in a straight line towards that target. In other words, once Flame Arrow is cast and fired, its trajectory cannot be changed. In this respect, Flame Arrow is similar to regular arrow. After being fired, an arrow's direction will not change unless interfered with by external forces. Of course, some special archery techniques may allow arrows to curve, but these exceptions are not considered. In short, it's easy to see how overpowered the ability of Flame Arrow to change direction once granted by Wind Spirit Moon Shadow is. This is the strength of Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Its stat increases never simply enhance spell power, but rather elevate the spell's mechanics. Chapter 65 Negotiation. Flower Flame Moon, the 16th. Phil's Potion Shop. The shop, large enough to hold a dozen people without feeling crowded, was bustling with activity. Clearly, the potion market was extremely prosperous during this period, having entered its peak sales season. All of this was thanks to the anomalies outside the city. Most people saw these anomalies as opportunities, and many even came from afar specifically to strike it rich. After all, normally, hunting Leeline creatures required venturing deep into dangerous primeval forests. The edges of forests near human cities rarely saw Leeline creatures. But now, in the forests outside Hogan City, Leeline creatures were commonplace. This kind of hunting activity, with a safer escape route, was practically free money for many mages whose main source of income was hunting Leeline creatures. The increase in hunting had also caused an unusual boom in Hogan City's potion market. 3 or 4 shop assistants were busy attending to customers. Gouda waited for a while, and as soon as one of the shop assistants had a moment to spare, he immediately squeezed in. "I'd like to see Mr. Oliver. Could you please inform him?" Gouda said. The shop assistant was slightly taken aback upon hearing this, but upon recognizing Gouda, he immediately understood, his smile becoming increasingly solicitous. "Please wait a moment." He quickly and hurriedly climbed the stairs to the second floor, then rushed back down after a short while. "Mr. Oliver is waiting for you upstairs. Please follow me," he greeted Gouda warmly as he led him upstairs. The upstairs room was much smaller than the downstairs room, containing only a few rooms. The shop assistant led Gouda to the innermost room. "This is Mr. Oliver's VIP room for receiving distinguished guests. I've brought you here. Please go in." With that, the shop assistant withdrew. Gouda knocked on the door with a composed expression. "Come in." Oliver's steady voice came from behind. Gouda opened the door and saw Oliver sitting behind a large Nanmu table in the luxuriously decorated VIP room. He was looking down, writing something on a piece of paper with a quill pen. Upon entering, Gouda remained silent, patiently waiting for Oliver to finish his work. Was there something so urgent that entertaining a guest couldn't be delayed? Clearly not. It was simply to create psychological pressure on him. If he couldn't contain himself and spoke first, he would subconsciously feel guilty for interrupting someone, putting him at a disadvantage before the discussion even began. Gouda surveyed the VIP room with great interest. The materials used in the room's decorations were clearly extremely valuable, even the decorative plants were of the highly prized golden thread lotus. But what shocked Gouda most was the enormous, rhomboid-shaped magic crystal, estimated to weigh over 5 kilograms, placed on the large Nanmu table. Magic crystals were among the most precious mineral resources in the world. They contained astonishing energy, and almost all magical facilities relied on them for power. Such a well-formed and enormous natural magic crystal likely cost hundreds of gold coins, yet it was displayed on the table as a decoration. In other words, a decoration worth 10,000 gold coins was placed right before Gouda's eyes. How extravagant! And how stingy! Hundreds of gold coins worth of magic crystals are displayed on the table as decoration, a sign of status. Yet, they only offer a paltry 200 gold coins to the Seda Herbal Garden, which has been in business for over a decade. Even after Gouda entered, Oliver, who was writing with his head down, didn't put down his pen and look up at Gouda for a good 2 or 3 minutes. What brings you here today? Have you made up your mind? Gouda nodded. I've thought it over carefully. Joining Phil's potion shop is indeed a rare opportunity. Once missed, it's hard to come by again. I think even if Mage Seda returns and knows about this decision, he won't object. Therefore, I agree to your proposal and am willing to transfer the Seda Herbal Garden to you. A wise decision, Oliver praised, seemingly satisfied with Gouda's understanding. But, Gouda continued. But what? Oliver frowned, scrutinizing Gouda with a chilling gaze, creating an invisible sense of pressure. I have to pay more, Gouda gritted his teeth and said with difficulty. 200 gold coins is really too low. Even the Mage Seda didn't pay that much for this herb garden. If he finds out I sold it for this price when he gets back, he'll definitely punish me. Is that so? Oliver narrowed his eyes at God, smiling with a knowing look that hinted at something he didn't say. If you really think that way, it does seem a bit low. If this causes you to be reprimanded by the Mage Seda, I'll feel bad. As he spoke, Oliver stood up from behind the large Nanmu table, grabbed the paper he had just written, and handed it to God. Sign this contract. His wrinkled face twitched, and I'll add another 100 gold coins. God's heart skipped a beat. He calmly accepted the contract, his gaze sweeping over it. The contents were simple. It required God to join Phil's potion shop and concoct potions for them. Phil's potion shop would provide him with resources to some extent. Furthermore, the contract stipulated a base salary of 10 gold coins per month for God, plus a 50% commission on the profits from each batch of potions he concocted. Assuming he concocts and sells one batch of basic spider venom potion daily, God could earn approximately 12.5 gold coins or more per month. While this wasn't as much as the monthly income from a herb garden, it offered a stable income regardless of circumstances, without the worry of sales or managing the herbs himself. Of course, this was based on God's current potion-making skills. As his potion-making abilities improved, the gap between this salary and the profits he could generate from running his own herb garden would widen significantly. If Phil's potion shop could adjust his compensation according to his potion-making level, it would be a relatively reasonable agreement. The problem, however, is that it clearly cannot. The contract's term is explicitly stated as 20 years. If God no longer wishes to make potions for Phil's potion shop within 20 years, he can terminate the contract early. However, for each year of early termination, a penalty of 100 Shan gold coins per year must be paid to Phil's potion shop. 10 years early would amount to 1,000 Shan gold coins. Gouda frowned, directly expressing his dissatisfaction. Isn't this contract period too long? And the termination fee is too high. How? Oliver chuckled. 20 years isn't long at all. In 20 years, you'll be in your 30s, in your prime. Why worry about 20 years being too long? Besides, this contract won't last forever. If your pharmaceutical skills improve quickly, I'll appropriately increase your compensation and renegotiate the contract. A merchant's promises should not be taken seriously without a written contract. Gouda indeed did just that, sneering inwardly, not believing a word. Oliver continued his spiel. As for the termination fee, once you become our potion master, we'll invest a lot of time and resources in training you. If we don't raise the termination fee, once you've improved and become more independent, you can easily pay the fee and go work for another potion shop. Wouldn't we be the ones getting ripped off and working for someone else? Besides the termination fee, signing this contract will bring in 300 gold, Oliver added meaningfully, subtly hinting at something to God. God fell silent for a long time, a conflicted expression on his face, as if deep in thought. Oliver, seeing this, gleamed with smugness. He was a seasoned businessman, having haggled countless times. He knew perfectly well that once the other party showed this expression, it basically meant the deal was done. Sure enough, a moment later, God suddenly looked up. Why do the other apprentices in the herb garden only have my contract? What about theirs? We at Phil's potion shop don't sign contracts with everyone. Only those with your abilities are specially drafted for us, Oliver said calmly. Don't worry, since I've paid a high price to acquire the Seda herb garden, I will naturally continue to employ the people from there, like the last straw. After hearing Oliver's assurance, God seemed to have made up his mind. Alright, however, I can't produce the land deed and house deed for the time being. Chapter 66 Win-Win. Actually, God didn't find the house deeds and land deeds in the secret box left behind by the Mage Seda. It's highly likely that the Mage Seda didn't value them highly enough to keep them in the secret box. Therefore, they were reduced to ashes in the explosion. This is the biggest hidden danger for Gouda after taking over Seda's herb garden. Without official contracts like house deeds and land deeds, there's a lot of room for manipulation if someone with ulterior motives finds out. It even affects the sale of the herb garden, as it is now. What? Oliver frowned upon hearing this. Even if he valued Gouda's potential, he wouldn't be willing to pay 300 gold without the deeds. Don't tell me he took the deeds and land deeds with him when he went back to his hometown to visit relatives. Oliver narrowed his eyes at Gouda, his eyes revealing a dangerous glint, even some anger. Because based on the information he currently had, he believed the Mage Seda was already dead. And indeed, that was the case. Oliver hadn't expected that the Mage Seda hadn't died of old age, but rather at the hands of God. In any case, he had already accepted that the Mage Seda was no longer alive. The current negotiations, in Oliver's view, were a tacit understanding between him and God. I know the Mage Seda is gone, but I won't say so. You also know I know the Mage Seda is gone, but you won't say so either. Essentially, Oliver valued God's potential and was paying to have God work for their potion shop for at least 20 years. What did he mean by telling me there were no land deeds or house deeds? Was he trying to play mind games with me? If he was so shameless, he wouldn't hold back. It's not like that. God seemed to sense Oliver's dissatisfaction, showing a troubled expression. Finally, as if making some difficult decision, God gritted his teeth, reached into his robes, and pulled out an exquisite wooden box, placing it on the table and showing it to Oliver. What's this? Oliver looked at the wooden box in surprise. Helpless, God told the truth. Master Seda placed a house and land deeds in this wooden box enchanted with an arcane lock, but he didn't leave any unlocking spell when he left. So, Oliver's eyes lit up when he heard Gouda's explanation and saw the wooden box Gouda had taken out. I see, he smiled, that's no problem. Give me the arcane box, I have a way to open it. Once I unlock the arcane lock and retrieve the house and land deeds, we can sign the transfer agreement. He reached for the arcane box, but Gouda, with even greater speed, grabbed it and pressed it to his chest. Cash on delivery. The transfer agreement hasn't been signed yet, and I haven't received the money. I'm giving you the box now, what if you try to deny it later, he said warningly. Oliver paused, then chuckled, with such a large shop here, you don't trust me, no way. Cash on delivery. Gouda, acting like a stubborn fool, shook his head obstinately, shoved the wooden box into his robes, and turned to leave. This made Oliver a little anxious. Wait, he chuckled, calling out to Gouda. How about this? I'll pay you 200 gold first, then we'll sign a transfer contract. After signing, you give me the wooden box. Once I unlock the secret lock and retrieve the house and land deeds, I'll give you the remaining 100 gold. How about that? After all, I'm not sure if the house and land deeds are actually in the secret box. Oliver's words were perfectly reasonable. No, 300 gold is 300 gold, it has to be paid in full at once. Gouda wouldn't listen to a word, stubbornly insisting, you're a big businessman, a big shot, powerful and influential in Hogan City. If you don't acknowledge the remaining 100 gold later, I have no recourse. Besides, If you find no land deed or house deed inside the secret box after it's opened, I can refund all 300 gold and void the transfer contract. This can be written in the contract. You're not worried that I dare to renege on my promise, are you? Oliver truly hadn't expected his apprentice to be so stubborn, and he didn't know where his confidence came from. However, what he said was indeed true. He didn't believe God had the ability to renege on his promise. He had indeed considered denying it later and insisting that the 300 gold had been paid in full when the contract was signed. This kid, he really judges people. Alright, this kid does have some potential. At such a young age, he's already adept at concocting both basic stamina potions and basic spider venom potions. The money I spent on him today, he'll earn back for me sooner or later. I won't lose out, at most I'll earn a little less. Oliver's voice was slightly cold, expressing his dissatisfaction while agreeing. Fine, then let's sign the transfer contract tomorrow, and I'll pay him a visit, then I'll be waiting for your arrival in the herb garden tomorrow, God said with a forced smile after Oliver agreed. After watching God leave the room, Oliver, who had been angry just moments before, immediately changed his expression, revealing a smug smile. As expected of a beggar's apprentice, no matter how talented, he can't overcome his limited knowledge. For a mage, a wooden box enchanted with arcane lock wouldn't just be for storing land deeds and house deeds, would it? There must be something far more precious inside. What could a third-rate mage apprentice possibly possess that warrants such a display? It should be all the potion formulas that old mage possessed, including the Tier 1 potion formula he'd researched over the years and related records. Although he didn't succeed until his death, he persisted for so many years, he wouldn't have persevered until now without some results. If we can get our hands on that incomplete formula, and with the combined efforts of our potion makers, we might actually be able to complete it. If that happens, with Tier 1 potions, my Fill Potion shop could even expand its business to Bremen City, an unexpected delight, a truly unexpected delight. We need to sign the contract as soon as possible and get our hands on this arcane box. Stepping out of Phil's potion shop, God, who had been stubborn just moments before, immediately changed his expression, revealing a relieved smile. He let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, I managed to fool them. The reason God was unwilling to sell the herb garden was not only because the other party's offer was too low, but also because he genuinely couldn't produce the property deed and land title deed. Without these two documents, the herb garden couldn't be considered his, so how could he sell it? The two most common ways to unlock arcane locks are using the spell of tapping and dispelling. Dispelling is a third-level spell, so we won't consider it, then we'll have to rely on spell of tapping. Spell of tapping is a first-level spell, and an obscure one at that. Even if Phil's potion shop has money and connections, it'll be difficult to find a first-level mage in Hogan City who knows this spell. If he could find one, Oliver would have found someone to unlock it on the spot, instead of wasting time talking to me. So, he's probably in the same boat as me, forced to either buy a spell scroll in Bremen or find a high-level mage to unlock it. Even at top speed, it'll take at least 10 days. 10 days is enough, but we can't be careless. We need to start preparing now. Thinking this, God looked up, checked the direction, and strode off. Chapter 67 Transactions. The apprentices were stunned as soon as they entered the dining hall. Inside, the fire blazed brightly. Hanging beside the fire were several lamb legs they had never seen before. The lamb legs had an enticing golden brown surface, coated with honey. They were also sprinkled with a mixture of herbs and spices, giving them an irresistible aroma. The lamb legs looked like they had been roasting for a long time, perfectly cooked, with a crispy skin. A clean linen table was laid out on the nearby table, piled high with side dishes. A large bowl of porridge made from carrots, turnips, potatoes, and other root vegetables, simmered for a long time, was sprinkled with a few sprigs of herbs unique to Hogan City for added flavor. Next to it were several loaves of wheat bread exuding a caramelized aroma. Compared to rye bread, wheat bread had a firmer crust and a soft, sweet interior, a complete upgrade. In addition, a large jug of fruit wine sat on the table. This wine was fermented by farmers from the surrounding villages and towns using fruit they had picked themselves. It wasn't very strong, but it was sweet and delicious, with a subtle fruity aroma, a top-quality beverage. What was this scene? The apprentices' minds were practically blank. Yet, their eyes instinctively gleamed with a longing for the delicious food before them. However, everyone wisely remained still, their gazes fixed on Gouda, who stood by the stove. Clearly, They understood that the unusual nature of today's food meant that something even more unusual had occurred. Gauda's gaze swept over the apprentices, confirming everyone in the herb garden was present. He clapped his hands and said, "I have something to tell you all. Phil's Potion Shop, our long-term partner, recently offered to buy our herb garden. I didn't agree at the time, and they subsequently terminated their cooperation, ceasing to buy any of our potions. Given the herb garden's current situation, without the income from potion sales, it can no longer continue operating. Of course, we could perhaps find another potion shop to partner with, but Phil's Potion Shop is a long-established shop in the city, with money and connections. Offending them will definitely lead to various obstacles in the future. Considering all of this, I finally had no choice but to agree to Phil's Potion Shop's acquisition offer. Tomorrow they will come to sign the herb garden transfer contract with me, meaning that from tomorrow onwards, the owner of the herb garden will become Phil's Potion Shop." The apprentices looked at each other, stunned by this shocking news, unsure how to react. Gauda observed their reactions. "However, don't worry, everyone. Although the owner of the herb garden has changed, Phil's Potion Shop has promised to continue employing you. In other words, apart from me no longer being the owner, nothing else will change much. You'll even get an extra, stable income," he chuckled. "After all, I can't compare to your large pharmacy, where you can get paid." Indeed, aside from room and board, the apprentices hadn't received any payment for working at the herb garden. In his previous life, Gauda would have been a ruthless capitalist, the kind to be condemned. Hearing that their jobs remained the same and they wouldn't have to leave the herb garden, the previously anxious apprentices immediately felt relieved. "Let's consider this a celebration of everyone having a better place and future," Gauda said. The next day, the 18th of the flower flame month. In the vibrant Seda herb garden, various herbs thrived. Dappled sunlight filtered through the tree canopy, casting shadows on the ground, indicating a pleasant day. "They've arrived." A knock came at the door of Gauda's room, and Amy entered, saying to him. Gauda nodded and went out first. "Come on, let's greet our distinguished guest." Amy watched Gauda's retreating figure, opened her mouth as if to ask something, but ultimately remained silent. In the reception room that had been specially prepared yesterday, the three sat down. Gauda, the seller, Oliver, the buyer, dressed in a dark robe, and a notary wearing glasses and holding a quill pen. "This is Mr. Bellamy from the Hogan City Guild, whom I invited to witness this transaction," Oliver introduced to Gauda. "Thank you for your trouble, Mr. Bellamy," Gauda greeted Bellamy respectfully. "We settled the details yesterday. The only remaining step is signing the contract." "Let's skip the formalities and get straight to the point," Oliver said. Gauda naturally had no objections. Bellamy then stood up and handed Gauda a thick contract scroll. "This is the transfer agreement I drafted. Mr. Oliver and I have both signed and stamped it. Please take a look." As the guild witness, Bellamy showed no arrogance and spoke politely to the simply dressed, young Goddard. Goddard took the transfer agreement and scanned it. On this day, the 18th of the flower flame month in the Nolan calendar 9655, in Hogan City, witnessed by Mr. Bellamy, this contract is hereby established as proof. Transferor. Transferee, subject of the contract, the transferor agrees to transfer the aforementioned herb garden, together with all crops, buildings, and ancillary rights thereon, to the transferee for 300 Sean gold coins. The transferee shall pay the full amount in gold coins to the transferor in one lump sum upon signing this contract. From the date of completion of payment, the herb garden and all its rights shall belong to the transferee, including but not limited to the transferor's guarantee that the herb garden is free from any outstanding debts or disputes. The above terms are agreed upon voluntarily and equally by both parties, and this contract is hereby established as proof. May the Holy Light guide this transaction to be a source of well-being for both parties. The contract document was drafted by Bellamy and is very rigorous and specific, including descriptions of the identities of both parties, descriptions of the property, transaction conditions, breach of contract clauses, etc. Even the condition that Goward mentioned yesterday, if the arcane box does not contain the house and land deeds, the contract is void, was included. At the end, the transferee's and notary's signatures and seals were already complete, only the transferor's signature area was blank. Any objections? Seeing Gord withdraw his gaze, Oliver knew Gord had finished reading the document. Gord shook his head, indicating no objection. Oliver nodded in satisfaction and then handed over another contract. It was the same 20-year employment contract he had shown Gord yesterday at Phil's potion shop. If there are no problems, let's sign both contracts together. Gord nodded slightly, took the quill from Bellamy, and first signed his name and fingerprint as the transferor on the transfer contract. Then he signed and fingerprinted the employment contract as well. The transfer contract was in triplicate, with one copy each for the transferor, transferee, and notary. The employment contract was in duplicate, with one copy each for Gord and Oliver. After seeing Gord sign and fingerprint all 5 documents, Oliver took out a hand-sewn money pouch from his chest and threw it on the table. Chapter 68: Absconding with Funds. The money pouch was made of dark brown leather, its surface meticulously polished, and its edges reinforced with delicate hemp thread. The closure featured a sturdy rope knot design. The knots were intricate and clever, allowing for quick opening while remaining difficult for outsiders to untie, ensuring the safety of the gold coins inside. The pouch itself was estimated to be worth several silver coins. Gada quickly picked up the pouch, unsealed it, and saw a soft wool lining inside. This design was intended to reduce the noise from the coins clattering together, while also protecting them from scratches or corrosion. Hundreds of shone gold coins lay quietly inside, gleaming, making Gada's eyes light up. Their heavy weight also gave him a sense of security. 300 shone gold coins. Count them carefully. Don't come back later saying it's not enough. I won't accept that, Oliver said calmly. Gada chuckled sheepishly. How could I not trust you? He emptied the gold coins from his purse, carefully counted them twice, and then put them back in. Stuffing the purse into his pocket, Gada took out a pre-prepared magic box and handed it to Oliver. Here's what you wanted. Oliver's eyes brightened slightly. He took the magic box, then forcefully tried to open it with his right hand, just like Gada had done before, knowing it was impossible, but still wanting to try. After confirming the magic box couldn't be opened, Oliver gave up and gently shook it. A rustling sound came from inside the magic box, like fine sand slipping through its fingers. Listening to the sound and weighing the magic box, Oliver smiled with satisfaction. Based on his experience, he could confirm that the magic box contained a considerable amount of paper. Clearly, it wasn't just land deeds and house deeds. What other documents could a potion master possibly hide in their arcane box besides the land deeds for their herb garden? With the signing of the transfer and employment contracts, the watchers who had been lurking outside the Seda herb garden finally disappeared. Next came a series of transfer procedures. Of course, for Oliver, the most important thing was to open the arcane box and retrieve the land deeds and house deeds. In short, this would take a few more days. However, this didn't stop the apprentices in the herb garden from continuing to work, even working harder. After all, they had just changed employers and wanted to show their skills. Of course, they continued to respect God, even though he was no longer the owner of the herb garden. Everyone knew that God had been hired as a potion master by Phil's potion shop, a position clearly superior to theirs. Whether out of courtesy or reason, their attitude towards God wouldn't change in the slightest. Flower Flame Moon, 25th. Phil's potion shop, 2nd floor. Oliver, dressed in a dark silk robe, carrying a scroll, hurried back to his room, his eyes shining. After closing the door, he bent down and took out an exquisitely carved wooden box from a cabinet under the table. With a potion shop as large as Phil's, Pierre knew this, so there was no reason Oliver wouldn't know. Therefore, the very first day after learning of the existence of the arcane box from God, he had already sent someone to Bremen to purchase the percussion spell scroll. Now, 7 days had passed, and the percussion spell scroll was finally in hand. Placing the arcane box on the table, Oliver rubbed his hands excitedly. Then opened the spell scroll. After a burst of magical energy, the scroll turned to ash and disappeared. The arcane box was open again. Oliver excitedly picked up the arcane box, gave it a gentle push, and the box, which had previously been impossible to move no matter how hard he tried, was now open. What met his eyes was a box full of papers, just as he had expected. Before his joy could fully spread, his brows furrowed. Oliver frowned and took out a top sheet of paper. Name, Seda herb garden. Number of people, 8 fixed assets, 1 herb garden, 4 herb fields, producing snake-tooth grass, mountain sage, high mountain ironwood root, and blazing sun fruit respectively. Cash on hand, 8 copper. Fixed expenses, 4-5 silver day. Living expenses, income, 15 to 20 silver day. Fixed output of primary spider venom potion. Unpredictable and variable income is not included for now. Variable expenses, herb seedlings, fertilizer, materials required for nutrients oil preparation. His gaze swept over the contents of the paper, and Oliver's expression froze. What is this? He was still somewhat incredulous, and with a blank stare, he put the paper aside and took out the second sheet of paper from the magic box. Then came the third, the fourth. Finally, Oliver stopped taking out the papers one by one and simply flung the box violently, scattering all the papers that flew around the room. No deeds, no land deeds, and even the incomplete Tier 1 potion recipe he'd expected. None of it. Just a pile of scrap paper. God! God! Oliver's furious, teeth-gritting voice echoed in the room. Amy, like Oliver, was staring blankly at a note. After finishing his meal and returning to his room, he found this note and 5 faintly glowing Sean coins on his table. The note was from God. The content was simple. It told him that Hogan City was not a safe place to stay, left him some travel money, and if he trusted him, he should find a way to leave as soon as possible. Amy was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized what was happening. He grabbed the note, ran out of the house, and rushed towards God's room. The door wasn't locked, it opened with a push. But when Amy opened the door, God was nowhere to be seen. He closed the door again, rushed out of the herb garden, and looked around at the entrance. Everywhere he looked, there were open fields and vast, or lush green forests. Away from this small herb garden, the world was so vast, who could know which direction Gouda, with no family or friends, had gone? Amy stood there, lost and bewildered, not knowing what to think. After standing there motionless for a long time, he seemed to finally come to his senses. He sighed softly and murmured to the air, "Take care," then he turned and walked back into the herb garden, his lonely figure quickly disappearing into the shadows. A small caravan of a dozen or so carriages was leaving the city. Since the Nottingham coal mines had dried up, Hogan City had to purchase all its coal from elsewhere. As a result, many small caravans had sprung up, specializing in purchasing coal and transporting it to Hogan City for resale. This caravan was in the business of this. Gouda was sitting in one of the somewhat empty wagons. The wagon was originally used to carry coal, but the coal had already been unloaded in Hogan City, and now that they were returning home, it was naturally empty. So, after some haggling, Gouda only paid 15 silver coins to get the caravan leader to give him a ride. The wagon used for transporting goods wasn't clean, covered in coal dust, and the ride was quite bumpy and uncomfortable. However, because it was a cargo wagon, the 2 horses pulling it were in their prime and ran very nimbly. The caravan as a whole didn't have many people, all simple folks earning a living through hard work. The driver of his wagon was a taciturn, dark-skinned, thin middle-aged man who, apart from exchanging a few words with Gouda when he boarded, hardly spoke again. This pleased Gouda greatly. Sitting in the wagon, a gentle breeze caressed his face. "This is a caravan I found on short notice. Before today, even I didn't know which caravan I would be leaving with, so even if Oliver has all the tricks up his sleeve, he definitely won't be able to find out how I left." God felt a sense of comfort as he touched the money pouch he had carefully placed on his chest, listening to the creaking of the wooden wheels on the ground. In this world, the area outside the city is extremely dangerous. Even official roads built and maintained by the government are not necessarily safe, as ferocious beasts and even feline creatures often roam freely. Therefore, in this world, most civilians generally do not easily leave their cities. Even if they do, they usually travel in groups. Although God is a mage apprentice, it doesn't mean he is unafraid of the dangers of the wild. More importantly, God is not familiar with the roads. Although his name is God, it doesn't mean he won't get lost. Therefore, leaving the city with a caravan that is extremely familiar with the official roads around Hogan City, and has a large number of members who can look out for each other, is definitely the best choice at the moment. As the convoy drove further and further away, watching the silhouette of Hogan City gradually disappear on the horizon, God silently said in his heart, "Goodbye, Hogan City." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69: The Journey. The caravan traveled eastward along the official road. Just outside Hogan City, vast fields stretched out on either side. Even in broad daylight, Many people were working in the fields. These fields belonged to the small villages surrounding Hogan City. These farming and pastoral villages relied primarily on agriculture, providing grain and meat to the residents of Hogan City in exchange for goods they couldn't produce themselves. Although each village had a relatively small population, generally no more than 1,000, these villagers and farmers actually constituted the majority of the world's population. However, this scene was only observed around Hogan City. As the caravan progressed, the roadside weeds and surrounding trees gradually grew thicker, and the human presence faded. Enormous trees, requiring several people to encircle, began to appear everywhere. Thick layers of fallen leaves piled up on both sides of the road. The sounds of birds and insects grew louder. Perhaps due to magic, or perhaps due to insufficient development, the wild plants in this world grew exceptionally lush and tall. Stay on the official road, and don't wander off, the driver reminded Gouda. Young people are impulsive and like to cause trouble, so he had to give them a few more instructions. The official road is maintained year-round by the government, and mages are sent to inspect and clear away any ley-line creatures in the surrounding area. While not absolutely safe, it's relatively safe most of the time. But once they leave the official road and enter the primeval forest, things can get unpredictable. Gouda nodded. He wouldn't risk his life for no reason. The caravan usually rested for 15 to 15 minutes every 2 hours, as both people and livestock needed rest and supplies. However, the caravan had just departed from Hogan City, and after several days of rest and recuperation, everyone was at their peak energy and stamina. So they continued without stopping until noon, when the leader ordered a 15-minute break. Upon hearing that they could rest, Gouda immediately jumped off the carriage. As the novelty wore off, the discomfort of the journey began to show. In his previous life, many people would feel tired after half a day on a smooth train, let alone Gouda, whose current mode of transportation was a bumpy cargo carriage. After just half a day, Gouda felt his backside was numb from the jostling. Fortunately, his diet and exercise had improved during this time, and his body was much stronger. After stretching a bit, Gouda took off the water pouch from his waist and took a sip of water. "You didn't bring enough water." The coachman also jumped off the carriage, took off a water pouch made of cowhide that was clearly 2 sizes larger than Gouda's from his waist, took a big gulp, and said, "My name is Gru. Water sources in the wild are not safe. To resupply, you can only go to the villages and towns along the way, and it will take another 2 days to reach the next village or town where you can resupply. It's alright, I'll drink sparingly," Gouda said. He didn't explain much. The reason he brought less water was not because he lacked common sense, but because the water creation technique gave him the confidence not to carry much water. For ordinary people in this world, the bulk of their burden on long-distance travel is often clean drinking water. Gru then took out a piece of salted beef from the cloth bag at his waist, broke it in half, and said, "Want to try some?" Gouda looked at the 2 pieces of salted beef in Gru's hand, hesitated for a moment, and then took one piece. Gru smiled and stuffed the remaining half of the corned beef into his mouth, chewing it. Seeing this, Gouda finally felt relieved and began to taste it. The beef, having been salted, was extremely salty and, after a long period of curing and pressing, was exceptionally firm, even dry and hard. Gouda chewed a couple of times, finding it a bit difficult, then swallowed it whole. Gru, seeing this, chuckled. "If it weren't for people like us who are used to eating this, ordinary people would have to tear it into pieces to eat. Why didn't you say so earlier?" "I'd already swallowed it," Gouda pouted. After a brief rest, the group set off again. Having actually experienced this journey, Gouda understood how difficult long-distance travel in the wild was for ordinary people. And this was on a main road. If, like Pierre in his youth, one were to hunt ley-line creatures for resources and plunge into the primeval forest, the challenge would increase several times over. The primeval forest didn't have such flat roads. It was rugged, steep, and fraught with danger. Whether it's wild beasts or even more ferocious creatures from the ley lines, they pose a serious challenge, let alone ordinary people, even for mages. For a typical mage apprentice, venturing into the primeval forest to hunt alone is a gamble with their life. Night falls. Traveling at night not only obstructs visibility, increasing the risk of getting lost and encountering danger, but also severely depletes the stamina of both people and livestock. Therefore, stopping for the night is the best option. The caravan had already found a safe location by dusk and set up a temporary camp for the night. In fact, The caravan had traveled this route many times before, and the exact day, time, and location of their stop were now well planned. Gouda's 15 silver coins were definitely well spent. A dozen or so wagons formed a simple camp, a fire was lit, and some hot soup made with salted beef was cooked, which was eaten with black bread. This was their simple meal for the journey. After arranging for people to take turns keeping watch, everyone went to sleep. These people, having been on the road for years, had long since developed the ability to fall asleep quickly and replenish their energy anytime, anywhere. But for Gouda, falling asleep was exceptionally difficult. Aside from the occasional roars of beasts echoing from the depths of the forest, the mere sight of flying insects drawn by the firelight was enough to unsettle him. Moreover, sleeping in the wild made Gouda feel extremely insecure. A high-ranking mage should be able to solve the problem of lodging in the wild, Gouda muttered to himself. As the saying goes, demand determines the market. Similarly, demand should also determine magic. In short, under this extreme insecurity, Gouda barely slept a wink all night, only managing a few scattered naps. The next morning, as the sun rose, the caravan quickly packed up and set off again. Having not slept a full night, Gouda spent most of the morning in a daze on the carriage before finally waking up completely. How many days does it usually take to get to Bremen? Gouda asked Gru. Indeed, the caravan's destination, which was also Gouda's destination, was Bremen, the largest city in the entire Bremen region. It takes about 7 or 8 days to get here, but only 5 days to get back. Gru thought for a moment and gave a conservative answer. 1 day in between, we need to take a short detour to a small town near Carmen to resupply water and food, and rest for a night. Otherwise, both people and horses will be too exhausted. In our business, it's all about the long term. Trying to make a quick buck for a day or two won't earn you much more money. It's pointless. After a day together, Gru had clearly become more familiar with Gouda and was talking more. Gouda naturally nodded in agreement. Driving while fatigued is always a big no-no. Chapter 70 Dagger. After 2 days of travel, the caravan finally arrived at the town Gru had mentioned. The town wasn't large, there was only one inn in the entire town. The caravan would stay there for the night. They would give the horses a good meal, replenish their food and water, rest for the night, and then continue their journey straight to Bremen. The inn provided simple food, a stew of root vegetables from a farmhouse, accompanied by smoked pork and salted fish. However, everyone ate with relish. The inn rooms were also very cheap, only 1 silver per night for a single room. Of course, they were also very basic. Besides a bed and a table, there was no other extra space in the room, even the toilet was shared. But Gouda didn't complain at all. For 1 silver, with free water, what more could he ask for? Moreover, after 2 consecutive nights in the wilderness, he was exhausted. Seeing such a bed, he felt no dissatisfaction, only genuine happiness. After a satisfying meal, Gouda returned to his room, pounced on the slightly firm bed, rolled around, and let out a contented groan. After a night's rest, the caravan departed on time the next morning. Having finally had a good night's sleep, Gouda sat refreshed in the carriage, just as he had been at the start of the journey. Moreover, he seemed to be gradually getting used to the bumpy ride, even beginning to try entering a meditative state in the carriage, practicing meditation techniques. It was said that the high-rank mage could enter a meditative state anytime, anywhere. Following that logic, perhaps a mage apprentice could do it too. And indeed, whether it was genuine talent or something else, after several attempts, Gouda actually managed to stumble into a meditative state. His daily practice, which he usually maintained, had to be interrupted due to the journey, and Gouda was indeed somewhat unaccustomed to it, feeling a bit uncomfortable. However, mastering the ability to practice during a bumpy journey was a considerable gain. Although his practice was often interrupted by unusual phenomena, it was better than wasting time. Flower Flame Moon, 29th. The day after leaving the town, at dusk. According to Gru, they should arrive in Bremen by tomorrow afternoon. The entire caravan was immersed in the joy of their impending arrival when, without warning, an unexpected event occurred. The carriage at the head of the caravan suddenly jolted violently. Those inside, caught off guard, fell from the carriage. However, the caravan members were all strong men, so they quickly scrambled to their feet. "Beast attack," the caravan leader shouted, reacting the fastest. With a cloud of dust, a huge, multi-segmented worm burst from the ground, overturning the lead carriage. The worm was exceptionally ferocious. Its legs were long and thin, ending in sharp claws. A hard, brown, keratinous shell covered its entire body. Above its powerful jaws, two black eyes gleamed and glared outwards. A burrowing worm. Guan didn't recognize the creature, but Gru beside him exclaimed its name, his face changing drastically. What is this? A carnivorous leeline creature that burrows underground, one of the most common leeline creatures on the official road. The burrowing worm moves underground, and once it detects prey on the surface, it will emerge to attack. The taciturn coachman uttered the longest sentence Gata had ever heard him speak. A leeline creature, Gata shuddered, his nerves tightening. His right hand instinctively pressing against the hidden mist fang tucked into his waistband. Grab your weapons, the caravan leader roared. At his command, the dozen or so men in the caravan grabbed the spears beside them. These were the most common defensive weapons used by the caravan, providing a degree of distance advantage and being easy to carry. The men, mistaken for prey by the burrowing worm, hastily drew their spears to fight back. This was not the first time they had encountered a ferocious beast on the road, so they responded with great discipline. Although everyone looked serious and tense, their movements were precise, and no one panicked or fled. Led by the caravan leader, the men, wielding rough spears, formed a tight formation around the burrowing worm. Their faces were tense, but they mustered their courage and unleashed a flurry of spears aimed at the worm's eyes, like thorns in a forest, attempting to halt the behemoth's onslaught. This was the only spot on the burrowing worm's body not covered by its keratinous carapace, its weak point. The caravan members understood this, and the burrowing worm certainly understood it even better. It turned its head, dodging the spears, while simultaneously swung its body, its tail whipping towards the two drivers at the front. The spear struck the burrowing worm's thick keratin layer, merely leaving white marks, barely causing damage, not even a scratch. Its massive body possessed immense strength. Its rock-hard tail swept the two drivers away, sending them flying 3 or 4 meters. Seeing this, the caravan leader's eyes twitched, but he gritted his teeth and said, "We can't retreat. We must continue this standoff, or this beast will devour us all." Wild beasts are mostly bullies who prey on the weak. If you show weakness, it will take advantage of you. But if you fight back fiercely, after a stalemate, unless it's been starving for days, it will usually retreat. It's just a meal. There's no need to risk your life. The same applies to leeline creatures. The caravan leader, with years of experience in this trade, understood this perfectly. When faced with an attack from a leeline creature, you must fight to the death to have any chance of forcing it back. However, he also knew that several members of the caravan would likely be seriously injured, and if they were unlucky, 1 or 2 might die. There's nothing you can do when faced with an attack from a leeline creature, you can only blame your bad luck. Boom. Facing the caravan's spear formation, the burrowing worm charged, attempting to use its powerful strength and hard shell to break through their formation. But the caravan's coordination was surprisingly smooth. Several men planted their spears in the ground, and just as the burrowing worm charged, they tilted them upwards, using leverage to trip it. "Well done, Gru, fire," the caravan leader shouted as soon as he saw the burrowing worm trip. "Fire, yes, fire." Burrowing worms are afraid of fire, Gru realized. As burrowing monsters, burrowing worms spend most of their time in the dark underground, and their eyesight has severely deteriorated, making them extremely afraid of fire, which possesses both high temperature and high brightness. The problem was that everyone had just settled down, set up camp, and hadn't lit a campfire yet. How could they immediately find something to throw with fire? The opportunity was fleeting. Under the fierce attack of the spears, the burrowing worm, extremely clever, tightly closed its eyes and tried to roll over, almost managing to turn itself over. Just as Gru was in a state of extreme panic, a scorching wave of heat tore past him unexpectedly. It was a beam of flame, blazing with intense light, slicing through the air and heading straight for the burrowing bug. The flame, like an arrow, struck the burrowing bug's tightly closed right eye, erupting in a blinding flash. The burrowing bug, which had been calm all along, panicked at this sudden attack, frantically twisting its body. The intense heat of the flame caused it immense pain. The struggling caused dust to billow up from the gravel road, creating a chaotic storm. Whoosh! It wasn't over yet. Another beam of flame, like a meteor, shot towards the burrowing bug's other eye. The burrowing bug, lying on its back, was like a sitting duck, unable to make any effective dodge. The two beams of flame forcefully blasted open the burrowing bug's eye carapace. Seeing the glimmer of victory, the caravan members, without time to ponder the source of the flames, thrust their spears into the exposed eyes of the burrowing worm. A piercing wail rang out. Dirt and sand flew through the air with the tremors. Everyone gritted their teeth, their movements swift and decisive, spear after spear plunging into the burrowing worm's eyes. The burrowing worm gradually began to struggle weakly, a sign of impending death. "Get out of the way," a low shout rang out. In the tense atmosphere, no one recognized the voice, but they instinctively obeyed, making way. Another burst of scorching flame struck the dying burrowing worm precisely in its right eye. Like the last straw that broke the camel's back, the burrowing worm twitched, then fell silent, utterly lifeless. The caravan members stood around the burrowing worm, panting heavily. Their eyes held both the joy of victory and a hint of shock. Once they calmed down, they naturally realized what the three bursts of flame were. Spells. From whom? It could only be the only outsider in the entire convoy. Chapter 71 Bremen. The caravan members, realizing what had happened, looked at each other, speechless for a moment. No one had expected that what appeared to be a young boy heading to a wealthy relative's city would actually be a mage. And judging from the spells Gauda had just cast, he was clearly more than just a naive apprentice who could only perform basic magic like pouring water. "Check on Caro and Culey's injuries," the caravan leader finally said, dismissing the others. He then approached Gauda, first thanking him. "Mage, thank you for your help. Since we're traveling together, helping each other is only natural," Gauda replied modestly. Mutual assistance among travelers was an unspoken rule, and being a mage didn't make an exception. "Mage, as is customary, the burrowing worm's corpse will be your spoils," the caravan leader said with exceptional respect. "I can't take it with me, and I'm too lazy to deal with it. How about I sell it to you cheaply? Consider the difference your due reward." Gauda glanced at the massive corpse of the burrowing worm, thought for a moment, and said this. "Mage, just call me Jose," the leader Jose nodded. "I'd be happy to accept your suggestion. The corpse of a zero-ring Leline creature is generally worth between 20 and 25 gold, depending on the valuable parts. If it's an edible Leline creature, the value will be even higher, but the flesh of the burrowing worm is sour and rotten, and it's not edible. The only valuable parts are its carapace and acid glands." At this point, Jose showed a relieved expression. Normally, when the burrowing worm encounters danger, it will spray acid from its acid glands. Given the corrosiveness of the acid, unless a mage intervenes, we ordinary people would all be severely injured. Fortunately, this time it was knocked to the ground and was killed before it could even spray acid. Gauda couldn't help but lament his own lack of knowledge once again. As a mage, Jose's understanding of Leline creatures was far inferior to that of an ordinary person. Jose continued, "We non-professionals can't process the corpses of burrowing worms to extract useful materials, so we can only take them to the shops in the city to sell. The shops usually offer half their value. Let's say the burrowing worm corpse is worth 22 gold coins, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, depending on the market, but the difference generally won't exceed 2 gold coins. Based on that, the shop will probably offer about 11 gold coins for this burrowing worm corpse." Gauda nodded slightly, knowing that Jose was telling the truth and hadn't lied to him. Having the purchase price might seem like a ripoff at first glance, but it's actually perfectly reasonable. Having the purchase price is a basic principle when buying non-mass-produced items like Leline creature corpses. Because there's risk in buying them. While Leline creature corpses are valuable, they only become valuable once they're sold. Non-mass-produced items mean they're not in high demand, meaning there might not be buyers with a genuine need. Although it was valuable, the merchant couldn't guarantee when it would sell. If it remained unsold for a day, it would tie up the merchant's working capital. Therefore, the merchant wouldn't do it without a 50% profit. To sell quickly, they had to be willing to sell at a low price. "Only 6 gold coins, and the whole thing is yours," Gauda laughed. "Killing this burrowing worm wasn't just my achievement, and some of you were injured. Besides, without you, I wouldn't have been able to haul the burrowing worm's carcass back. This is your deserved reward," he explained. Jose and Gauda exchanged a glance and sincerely said, "Thank you for your generosity." The burrowing worm attack was a minor incident on this journey. The 2 drivers who were swept away by the burrowing worm's tail suffered some injuries, breaking bones, and it seemed they would need a long recovery period. As for Gauda, it was pure gain. Gold coins plus 6. And, burrowing worm, plus 1. Origin. 0 rings, burrowing worm, January 7th. Because everything went so smoothly, He even somewhat hoped he might encounter one or two more burrowing worms along the way. As it turned out, the official road was indeed relatively safe. This was the only incident that occurred along the way. A day later, at noon on the second day, the trees gradually thinned out, and traces of human activity could be seen. Having reached this point, they had essentially left the forest, and the tense atmosphere of the group finally relaxed. Everyone became more lively, chatting and laughing, imagining reuniting with their families. Fields gradually appeared on both sides of the road. These were villages and towns surrounding Bremen. Farmers working in the fields glanced at the passing convoy on the official road. Then, seeing the burrowing worm corpses on the carts, they all showed expressions of awe. The official road gradually widened and became bustling. After traveling for quite some time, the convoy carrying the burrowing worm corpses finally approached their destination, Bremen. This largest city in the Bremen region is located beside Lake Deepflow, the largest lake in the region. Centered on Deepflow Lake, the waterways extend in all directions, reaching most cities in the Bremen development region. Water transport is the most convenient mode of transportation. It is precisely because of this excellent geographical location that Bremen City has become the largest city in the Bremen region. In comparison, the backwardness and poverty of Hogan City, which has no waterways, is understandable. Under the afternoon sun, the lake shimmers with a golden light, like fish scales. The massive city of Bremen stands beside the lake. The city walls are high, built of ancient gray stone, and topped with staggered towers and magic crystal lamps. The city gates are majestic, carved with intricate runes. We've arrived, cheers erupted from the caravan. Let's go into the city, Jose, the leader, laughed heartily. With Bremen City in sight, God jumped down from the carriage. Gru, the driver, paused, looking at Gato with confusion. Thank you for your help along the way, aren't you coming into the city with us? Gru asked, bewildered. No, Gato waved his hand. Entering the city with so many people, especially with a burrowing worm corpse in the cart, would easily attract attention, which was not Gato's intention. Not to mention, with so many eyes watching, and the fact that he had displayed the flame arrow spell yesterday. When traveling, it's essential to be wary of others. To avoid potential trouble, Gato chose the safest way to enter the city. He would wait for the caravan to enter before entering alone. Gato left decisively. Watching his departing figure, the others could only sigh. Knowing that it was already a coincidence that they had even crossed paths with someone like a mage. To them, Gato was ultimately just an extraordinary passerby. Since they were parting ways, they wouldn't dwell on it anymore. Under the watchful eyes of many civilians at the city gate, the caravan slowly drove into Bremen. Chapter 72 Lady Missu. Bremen, as the largest city in the Bremen region, doesn't have just one city gate like Hogan. Gato took a detour for about half an hour, choosing to avoid a convoy and enter the city through another gate, the River Gate. Bremen has an extremely high daily flow of visitors, even after passing through multiple gates. Therefore, when Gato steadily stepped into the city, he didn't attract much attention. Only a group of simply dressed young men wandering near the city gate noticed him. After exchanging a few words, a young man in hemp clothing approached him. Hello, sir, do you need a guide? I know most of the city very well, even the small stalls. I know their locations today. Whether you need accommodation, are looking for someone, or are looking for work, I can give you directions. Clearly, Gato, travel-worn and carrying a bundle, made his identity as a visitor very obvious. Having a local guide was indeed necessary for a newcomer. Gato thought for a moment and asked the crucial question, how much do you charge, sir? 1 silver coin will be enough to hire me for the whole afternoon, the boy in hemp clothing exclaimed happily. All right, then lead the way. Gato took a silver coin from his pocket and tossed it to the boy. Knowing the principle of not flaunting wealth, Gato stuffed the money bag containing most of his gold coins into his robes, keeping only a small amount of loose change for daily use in his pocket. This way, he wouldn't expose his wealth when withdrawing money, thus avoiding attracting unwanted attention. During his journey, Gato had already planned where to go and what to do after entering the city. The first thing he would do upon entering the city was to rent a place. If all went well, he would be staying in Bremen for a considerable period, and staying in a hotel would be too expensive. Sir, if you want to rent a place in Bremen, there are many options, a boy named Lyman immediately explained in detail after hearing Gato's needs. First and foremost, the best environment, the safest and most secure area is Deep Stream District. Most of the city's nobles, top merchants, and mages live there. However, the rent for a house there is over 200 Shan gold coins a year. Excellent, Gata thought to himself without even thinking. Then there are houses in the Siren district, the most bustling main commercial area of Bremen City. It's convenient and has a great environment, but of course, the prices aren't cheap. Annual rent is generally between 100 and 200 Siren gold coins. Good, no need to even think about it. Then there are houses in the Davies district. Davies Street is full of small shops. Although not as developed as the Siren district, it's still a commercial area with good security and convenient living. The annual rent here is generally between 20 and 100 Siren gold coins. Next are houses in the Kamen district. There are many small workshops near Kamen Street, and the residents are mostly local artisans, or houses in the Tekton district. Tekton district is generally inhabited by employees of shops in the city. The housing conditions in these two districts are below average, and of course, the prices are cheap, with annual rent generally around 20 gold coins. As for the cheapest houses in Bremen City, they are in the Hogan district. There, a house rents for only 2 silver coins per week, which is only 5 gold coins and 4 silver coins per year. Gata had figured it out. The district and street names in Bremen are directly derived from the city names of the Bremen region. Unfortunately, the cheapest houses in Bremen are in the Hogan district. Having just left Hogan, Gata had no intention of revisiting his hometown and immediately ruled out Hogan. "Take me to Carmen Street," Gata said to Lyman after a moment's thought. "Sir, Bremen is very large, and the districts are far apart. We're currently at the river gate, and it's a full 6 or 7 kilometers from here to Carmen Street," Lyman suddenly reminded him. Good heavens! Gata was startled. At a glance, Bremen was probably the size of a 3rd or 4th tier city in his previous life. "Then let's take a carriage," Gata readily agreed. "Sir, we can wait here for a few minutes. The next public carriage to Carmen Street will be here soon." A public carriage. It sounded novel. Clearly, Hogan didn't have one. It seemed highly likely to be exclusive to large cities like Bremen. Yes, a short trip by public carriage costs 2 copper coins, and the full trip costs 4 copper coins. From here to the Carmen district, it only costs 4 copper coins per person. If you hire a taxi, it will cost at least 16 copper coins, Lyman calculated for God. "Alright, let's wait then." After about 3 or 4 minutes, accompanied by the creaking of wheels, a platform-like carriage pulled by 2 horses appeared in view and stopped near the river gate. About 20 people got off the carriage. The carriage was double-decker, with a door at the back and 15 windows. It could seat 12 people inside, and 14 more on the upper level, accessible by a ladder. The driver sat on the roof. There was also a fare collector next to the door. This was indeed a novel sight for God. 2 people, to Carmen Street. God took out a silver coin and handed it to the fare collector. "Full trip ticket, 4 copper coins, 8 copper coins for 2 people. Here's your change of 4 copper coins." The fare collector took out 4 copper coins from the money box and handed them to God. "Okay," Gata took the money and led Lyman to the 2nd floor of the carriage. After pausing for about 10 minutes, the carriage was full of passengers and set off. They traveled along the street, past houses with chimneys, some with garden-like courtyards. Passengers came and went, getting on and off. Because these public carriages didn't have designated stops, they followed a fixed route, stopping and boarding whenever someone called. The journey was smooth and uneventful. After about 40 minutes, Gata arrived at Carmen Street. Led the way to 267 Carmen Street. After getting off, Gata's destination was clear. "No problem, sir, please follow me," Lyman said confidently. Led by Lyman, Gata arrived at 267 Carmen Street, a semi-detached 2-story building. The building had intricate carvings and a stone base. Various flowers were planted on either side of the entrance, indicating that the owner was a person of refined taste. The windows of the building were fitted with linen curtains, which swayed gently in the breeze. 2 wisteria vines grew along the entrance, intertwining and reaching the window, adding a touch of wildness to the building. Gata slowly ascended the steps in front of the small building, raised his right hand, and gently knocked on the wooden door. A dozen seconds later, the heavy wooden door opened, and a woman in a long, ankle-length silk robe stood in the doorway, looking at Gata with considerable wariness. "And you are, hello, I'm looking for Mrs. Misu," Gata said with a smile. Chapter 73 Google Datu. The woman frowned slightly. "Yes, that's me. Is there something you need?" Upon hearing this, Gauda waved the package in his hand. I'm from Carmen, here in Bremen to make a living, and I need to rent a place. Perfect timing. My neighbor, Mr. Marcel, used to work as a watchmaker in Bremen and rented from you. When he heard I was coming to Bremen, he strongly recommended you, Mr. Marcel said that Mrs. Missou is meticulous, generous, and fair to her tenants. She's the best choice for renters. Missou is a woman of about 40 years old, well-maintained, and very elegant. Hearing Gauda's effusive praise, she smiled reservedly. After a moment's thought, she remembered, it was Mr. Marcel, who moved out a couple of years ago, who recommended you to me, Mr. Marcel. He was a good tenant too. He cleaned the house spotlessly before leaving and even gave me a watch strap he made himself, saying it was a thank you for my care over the years. Since you were introduced by Mr. Marcel, please come in. We can discuss the details. Mrs. Missou invited Gauda into the house. Thank you, Mrs. Missou. Gauda placed his hand on his chest in a gesture of respect and then looked at Lyman beside him. Sir, I'll wait for you outside, Lyman quickly replied, being very perceptive. Gauda nodded and, guided by Mrs. Missou, entered the house, sitting down by the fireplace in the hall. The Missou family's hall was quite large, occupying almost the entire first floor. The walls were adorned with many decorative paintings and numerous ornamental plants. Would you like some black tea? Mrs. Missou brought over a pot of black tea. Gauda nodded. Thank you. May I ask your name? Mrs. Missou poured Gauda a cup of black tea, her eyes flickering slightly. Google Dito, madam. You can just call me Google. Gauda had already thought of an alias. Although from the letter Missou sent to Master Seda, it was clear that Master Seda hadn't told Missou about his specific actions in Hogan City, nor had he mentioned the apprentices in the herb garden. Presumably, he didn't want his wife to know the evil deeds he had committed, protecting his image in her eyes. But what if? So, to be on the safe side, an alias was definitely necessary. As for Mr. Marcel, his name was also learned from the letter. In a letter from 2 years ago, Missou had happily shared with Master Seda that her tenant, the watchmaker Mr. Marcel, had given her a beautiful watch strap before leaving Bremen City to return to Carmen City. This was the only tenant in all these years who had given her a gift upon leaving. So she had specifically mentioned it in her letter. Gauda picked up his teacup and took a sip of black tea. This tea was unlike the delicate and elegant taste of black tea he traditionally knew. It was quite full-bodied, with a subtle floral aroma and a slight astringency. It must be a blend, made from several different types of black tea. Very good black tea, he politely complimented. How is Mr. Marcel doing lately? Mrs. Missou asked with a smile. He's doing well, enjoying his retirement, Gauda replied cautiously, trying to avoid revealing any information to avoid giving himself away, while quickly changing the subject. Madam, do you have any houses you haven't rented out yet? Mrs. Missou smiled. Just last month, a tenant said there were many opportunities in Hogan City downstairs, and he wanted to try his luck, so he moved out. The house became vacant. I've been busy lately and haven't found a new tenant yet. The exact location is 437 Carmen Street, but I should warn you beforehand that 437 is a row of bungalows with only a living room, a relatively simple kitchen, a bathroom, a dining room, and a large hall with a closet. Of course, that hall is definitely not as big as mine, madam. That's perfect. I don't need such a large house for myself, Gauda said sincerely. Lady Missou was pleased with Gauda's straightforwardness and continued, the rent for house number 437 is 20 gold coins a year. I hope you can pay at least 6 months rent up front. In addition, you'll need to pay a 2 gold deposit for the furniture. However, for Mr. Marcel's sake, I can waive the deposit. If that's acceptable, we can go see the house right away. Madam, your generosity is exactly as Mr. Marcel described. Gauda thanked Lady Missou for waiving the deposit. This is a price I can accept. I'd like to see the house now. Then let's go. Lady Missou nodded in satisfaction. Clearly, Lady Missou was very pleased with Gauda's constant praise. Gauda finished his tea in one gulp, then got up with Lady Missou and left her house. Sir Lyman, who was waiting at the door, immediately greeted Gauda as soon as he came out. Gauda nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Number 437 is just a short walk from here. We'll walk there, Lady Missou said. Led by Mrs. Missou, Gauda arrived at the house located at 437 Carmen Street. Lyman, as usual, waited outside and did not follow. Mrs. Missou opened the door and led Gauda into the house, giving him a thorough look inside and out. Compared to the Misu family home, House 437 was significantly smaller. However, it was still quite nice. The dining room had excellent natural light, the kitchen extended to the back, and there was also a small balcony large enough for drying clothes and growing flowers, a pleasant surprise. It was more than enough for one person. Furthermore, the house was fully furnished, clean, and tidy. Gada nodded repeatedly in satisfaction. "Madam, let's rent it for 6 months then." Mrs. Miso had brought a rental agreement with her when she left, and she immediately took it out, ready to sign the lease with Gada. Mr. Google, what do you do for a living? Mrs. Miso asked before signing the contract. This was a background check. If Gada had any unusual profession, it could potentially cause her losses, and for risk considerations, she wouldn't rent it out. "I'm a repairman." Before leaving home, Gada had already arranged his identity. "The kind that repairs magical items." "Yes, but only the lowest level magical items, just enough to make a living." Madame Misu raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised. "You look so young, I didn't expect you to have such a high level of skill." Gada chuckled. "My father and grandfather were both in this business. I learned from them from a young age, so." Madame Misu's lips curled slightly. Without hesitation, she readily wrote the time and rent on the contract, signed her name, and handed it to Gada. "You can entertain guests in the house, but try not to do so at night," she advised. "Also, if you plan to stay in Bremen City as a repairman long-term, it's best to join a local artisan guild. Although there will be a membership fee, it's negligible compared to the benefits of joining the guild." "Yes, madam." After signing his name, Google did too. Gada reluctantly counted out 10 Shan gold coins and handed them to Madame Misu. "There are clean blankets and sheets in the closet." After putting away the rental agreement, Mrs. Misu handed the key to Gada, added a few more words, and prepared to leave. "It's getting late, and Sel will soon be finishing his lessons for the day, so I'll go back and prepare dinner. If you have any questions or need anything later, you can come to me again." "Sel is your son?" Gada asked casually as he saw Mrs. Misu out. "Yes, he studies at a church school." Mrs. Misu smiled kindly, "and he does very well." Chapter 74 Settling Down. Finding a place to stay was just the first step in settling down in Bremen. After seeing Misu off and leaving his luggage in room 437, Gada closed the door and prepared to head to his next destination. Of course, he carried his purse with him. "Take me to the best value clothing store nearby, is that alright?" he asked Lyman. Clothing, food, shelter, and transportation. With shelter secured, the next step was naturally clothing. Gada was still wearing the rough linen clothes he wore as an apprentice. It wasn't that he couldn't wear them, but clothes make the man. Since he was going to work as a restoration craftsman, he was already too young, and if he dressed any more shabbily, it would make people doubt his skills. Lyman's 1 silver guide fee was certainly not for nothing. Upon hearing Gada's request, he nodded without hesitation and said, "No problem, sir. Please follow me." "Where is the artisan guild in the city?" Gada asked, inquiring about news in Bremen as he followed Lyman to the clothing store. Besides the Mage Association, most guilds in the city are located in the Siren district. However, if you want to join the Craftsman's Guild, you either need to pass the guild's examination or have a recommendation from a formal member of the guild, Lyman explained to Gada in detail. After listening quietly to Lyman's explanation, Gada asked with concern, "How many mage associations are there in Bremen?" 3, Lyman replied knowingly. "First is the Bremen Mage Association, which is officially under the jurisdiction of Bremen, then the Ancient Books Guardians Association, and finally the Emerald Alliance." Pierre wasn't exaggerating. The Emerald Alliance was indeed one of the 3 major mage associations in Bremen, though he didn't mention that there were only 3 mage associations in total in Bremen. The Carmen district was a concentration of small workshops. When God followed Madame Missa to room 437, he had seen a few scattered workshops along the way. Clearly, many artisans used their homes as workshops, mostly in a shop in the back or shop in the upper floor arrangement. Lyman led God through several turns, and before they knew it, they were on a street lined with the workshops. The workshops on both sides of the street all had catching signs or banners with images of bread, hammers, and other symbols, directly indicating the nature of the business. Lyman led God to a shop with a banner depicting scissors. "Don't let the small size of the shop fool you," Lyman told God. "Old Hatton's craftsmanship is universally acknowledged, and the materials he uses are top-notch." God nodded slightly and stepped inside. The shop was relatively small, with various fabric products hanging on the walls. From rough, heavy linen to finer wool, linen, and even silk, they had it all. Several wooden mannequins displayed the latest clothing styles. The air was filled with the smell of freshly cut fabric and tanned leather. The shop owner, an elderly man with slightly graying hair and beard, sat at a large wooden table, engrossed in a pile of fabric and needlework. Upon seeing a customer enter, he immediately put down his work. "Sir, what would you like to buy?" Gotta thought for a moment and replied, "2 sets of everyday clothes, made of linen. Wool and linen are the 2 most common types of everyday clothing. However, it is currently the flower flame month, which is traditionally May, and the weather is expected to only get hotter. Considering this factor, more breathable linen clothing is obviously more suitable. Please wait a moment." Old Hatton carefully looked Gotta up and down, then got up and went to the back of the shop. After a short while, he came out with several sets of clothes. "Are you satisfied with these sets?" Summer clothing tends to be simple and practical, with loose-fitting, belted outer garments as the main style, and long robes as an option. The lower body consists of wide-legged linen trousers. Even in his previous life, the styles of men's clothing were extremely limited, let alone in this world, where there was almost no choice. The colors were even more limited, mainly consisting of shades of brown, gray, and dark blue provided by natural dyes. The main consideration was whether it fit well. Clearly, Old Hatton was still sharp-eyed. The glance he gave Gods before going into the warehouse to retrieve his clothes was a thorough scan of his physique. Therefore, the clothes he ultimately took out fit him exceptionally well. Gods eventually chose 1 set each of gray and brown as everyday wear. The 2 linen outfits, along with 2 pairs of low-cut leather shoes, cost Gods a total of $26 silver. After leaving the clothing store, Gods asked Lyman to take him to the watch shop. Living in a big city is different from Hogan City. Knowing the exact time is essential. Therefore, a pocket watch that could be carried around was extremely important. Led by Lyman, Gods pushed open the heavy wooden door, accompanied by the soft ringing of a bell, and entered a watch shop filled with a mixed sense of leather and metal. Compared to the clothing store, the watch shop's furnishings were much more elegant. Mirrors with gold trim hung on the walls, and exquisite pocket watches were displayed in the showcases. The shop employee politely approached, giving Gotta a discreet glance at his attire before asking, "Sir, what do you need?" "A precise pocket watch." The clerk nodded, bent down, and used his white-gloved hands to retrieve a silver pocket watch from the display case. "Sir, how about this pocket watch?" "It was crafted by Master Ned. Look at the engraving, how captivating." The watch case was indeed adorned with exquisite patterns. "How much?" Gowder wasn't particularly picky about the style, as long as it worked. He was more concerned with the price. "Not expensive, only 1 gold, plus a free strap. Furthermore, if the hands stop working or become inaccurate, you can bring it to us for repair, free of charge." Seemingly worried that Gotta might find it too expensive, the clerk pointed to other gold-cased pocket watches in the display case. "These pocket watches are priced at 5 gold and up." "Okay, this one will do." Gotta followed his wallet's lead. Guided by the clerk, he paid at the counter. As he left the clock shop, God glanced at his newly acquired pocket watch and realized it was almost 5 o'clock. "Thank you for your help today. You can go home now," God said to Lyman. "You're welcome, sir." After seeing Lyman off, God didn't immediately go home, but instead found a small restaurant nearby for dinner. Today was, after all, a housewarming, so a good meal was worth celebrating. To his shame, this was his first time eating out since arriving in this world. God ordered a 7 copper coin roast pork with applesauce, a large cup of tea worth 1.5 copper coins, a 3 copper coin sausage with mashed potatoes, a 1 copper coin serving of vegetables, and a 1.5 copper coin fried egg. A total of 14 copper coins, or 1 silver and 2 copper coins. Still not satisfied after finishing all the food, he added 1 copper coin for a slice of bread with butter. An extremely lavish meal, but also expensive. My savings are about to fall below 300 gold coins. After paying, God found that he only had 4 3-leaf silver coins and a few scattered copper coins left in his pocket. Chapter 75 Craftsman's Guild. Back at house number 437, God lit a kerosene lamp and spent some time tidying up the room. Having settled in Bremen City, God sat in the empty hall, reorganizing his thoughts. After determining that he couldn't stay in Hogan City for long, his plan became clear. First, he needed to sell the herb garden, which he couldn't take with him anyway. for a good price. Then, he would leave Hogan City with the proceeds and try to use the exemption recommendation letter left by Mage Seda to enter the Seers Magic Academy and receive formal basic mage education. However, this was clearly more complex and troublesome than it seemed, and couldn't be accomplished overnight. He wouldn't consider how to get from Bremen City to St. Cien City, where the Seers Magic Academy was located. After all, even getting from Hogan City to Bremen City was difficult for Gouda at his current level. Just figuring out whether the exemption recommendation letter was reliable was no simple matter. However, without understanding the origin of this letter of recommendation without examination and why Master Seda had disregarded it, Gouda dared not simply barge in with it. Arriving in St. Cien after countless hardships, only to have the letter rejected, was a minor concern. Gouda feared for his life. After Master Seda's death, if anyone in the world knew the origin of this letter of recommendation without examination, it could only be his wife, Lady Misu. The first step was to approach Lady Misu and then find a way to obtain information about the letter of recommendation. Fortunately, the 20 letters Master Seda treasured contained many useful clues and information. Therefore, after arriving in Bremen, Gouda was able to directly follow the address revealed in the letters to find Lady Misu. If there was any way to contact Lady Misu without arousing her suspicion, it would undoubtedly be to rent the property Master Seda left to his wife. After the Mage Seda left for Hogan City, Lady Misu had been relying on renting out properties to make a living. God also needed to rent a house to settle down temporarily in Bremen. It was foreseeable that he would stay in Bremen for a considerable period. Therefore, he needed a job that would generate income. Firstly, to avoid running out of money, although 300 Shan gold coins would be enough for him for a long time. Secondly, to avoid attracting attention. Unlike his previous life, where unemployed youths were commonplace, in this world, an unemployed person always drew attention. After careful consideration, a stable job was definitely out of the question. It lacked freedom, would restrict his actions, and affect his plans. Besides, working for someone else was out of the question. As for freelancing, his old profession as a potion maker seemed decent, but upon closer inspection, it wasn't suitable. Without his potion garden, it would be difficult to reduce costs. Moreover, being new to the city, and with Bremen being a large city, his limited potion production would make it difficult to secure a stable client in the short term. In short, it was a thankless task. Ultimately, Gouda chose a profession that offered no future in Hogan City but was extremely lucrative in Bremen, a repair craftsman. Besides the financial prospects, being a repair craftsman had another advantage. Frequent contact with magical items would indirectly enhance Gouda's knowledge of magic. After the blooming of flowers came the sunniest time of year. The flower flame moon ended, and the sunlit moon arrived. Gouda's first morning in Bremen began with a cup of black tea costing 1.5 copper coins and a piece of honey-smeared wheat bread. After a simple breakfast at a small restaurant, Gouda boarded a public carriage and arrived at the Craftsman's Guild in the Siren district. He alighted from the carriage, entered the hall, and stood before the young female greeter. "Sir, are you looking for a suitable craftsman, or would you like to join our guild?" the greeter asked with a smile, looking at Gouda, who had changed into new clothes. "I want to join a guild, but I don't know any official members who can recommend me," Gouda said bluntly. "That's all right. A recommendation from a formal member isn't always necessary. If you pass the guild's assessment, we'll welcome you to join," the greeter said familiarly. "How is the assessment conducted? What kind of craftsman are you? Jeweler, watchmaker, carpenter, or blacksmith?" "A repair craftsman, a repair craftsman." "Really?" The young greeter looked surprised. "Of course. Why, repair craftsmen are a rare and highly sought-after talent in our guild." "Sir, please wait here a moment while I inform Mr. Bass, please." Gouda nodded slightly. The young greeter then swayed gracefully and hurried upstairs. A moment later, she followed a middle-aged man in a black classical robe downstairs. "This must be Mr. Bass," the man the greeter had mentioned. "You're the repair craftsman Anna spoke of." Bass's initial delight faded upon seeing Gouda, replaced by suspicion. He's still too young, Gouda thought to himself. Although he was now more robust than before and had deliberately dressed more maturely, his youth was undeniable. And the profession of restorer was, in most people's eyes, a profession requiring experience. "My father and grandfather were both restorers, and I learned from them from a young age." God had to resort to the same excuse he'd used with Madame Misu. "If you doubt my abilities, there's always an assessment, isn't there?" "All right, Base said without further ado, placing a small, round bead on the table. If you can repair this luminous bead, you'll pass the assessment. There's a tool room upstairs. You can use the tools and supplies for free. Gua didn't waste any more words, picking up the luminous bead and gesturing to the female greeter named Anna. Lead the way. Led by Anna, Gua arrived at one of the workshops on the second floor of the Craftsman's Guild. The workshop contained a large table, piled high with various tools, including carving knives and magical ink needed for repairing magical runes. Gauda entered the workshop and said to the young female greeter, "Please wait outside for a moment." He then closed the door. The greeter had no objection. Repairing magical items was meticulous work. Having someone watching could distract the craftsman and cause the repair to fail. However, to her surprise, the door was opened in less than 15 minutes. "Sir, what's this?" she asked, puzzled. As far as she knew, a repairman would typically take at least half an hour to repair a magical item, even the most basic everyday magical item. Had he given up? So young? He certainly didn't seem like a qualified repairman. The young female greeter thought to herself, but felt a strange sense of disappointment. "It's done." Gauda handed the luminous bead to Anna. "Already done?" Anna exclaimed in disbelief. Seeing Gauda nod in affirmation, she quickly said, "Wait a minute, I'll take it to Mr. Base right away." With that, she scurried away in her leather shoes. Gauda smiled and watched Anna leave. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.